Lord of Mysteries, Lord of Order by Da Bai Bu Shi Xiong Chapter 51-75. After some thought, Aaron called the butler in, tapping his finger lightly on the table and slowly said, "Take an invitation card and go find this Mr. Humphrey Bear after work. Invite him in my name, he is a government employee in the agricultural department." Although the butler didn't know why Lord Aaron wanted to invite an ordinary government employee, he still turned and went downstairs to prepare the carriage. After the butler left, Aaron took out a Sequence 8 law enforcer Beander characteristic he had brought back from the Nation of Disorder, and with the prepared auxiliary materials, he concocted a bottle of potion. Looking at the pale golden liquid before him, Aaron closed his eyes and meditated to restore his spirituality and maintain his best state. Moments later, Aaron raised the cup and drank the potion in one gulp. A burning sensation came, but it wasn't strong. Aaron felt the potion integrating into his body, his spirituality spreading and fluctuating. Perhaps it was because for over a month, his nightly judgment and maintenance of order in the East Borough, Dock District, and Backland Bridge District had aligned with the sheriff's acting requirements, leading to some digestion of the potion immediately upon consumption. Aaron felt the changes in the potion, nodded with satisfaction, and quietly waited for the butler to return, while picking a few criminals from the list provided by Darren's intelligence organization on the table as his targets for tonight's hunt. Just 10 minutes later, the butler knocked and entered, followed by a young man whose spectacles had a chipped corner and whose clothes were wrinkled and covered in shoe prints. Aaron's eyebrows slightly furrowed, not complaining that the butler brought an unkempt person upstairs, but rather curious about what had happened to him. The butler noticed Aaron's confusion and explained, "When I arrived at the government building, a group of thugs were beating Mr. Humphrey. I had my attendant rescue him. Due to the urgency of time, there wasn't enough time to get Mr. Humphrey a change of clothes." Aaron couldn't help but shake his head upon hearing this. Such crude methods didn't seem like the tactics of Earl Hall or Duke Negan. Indeed, the butler added, those thugs were street hooligans from the Zemangar Party. The Zemangar Party? That gang mainly composed of Highlanders. I remember they are backed by the Fosak ambassador, Bakran Jean Martin. HMPH, a crude but very effective method. Whether those two great nobles admit it or not, some will suspect if it was the other party's frame-up, further deepening the rift between the two parties. Aaron didn't intend to get further involved. This was part of George III's plan to become a god, and with his current power, he couldn't change it. He then looked at the disheveled man. Although he looked a bit pathetic, it couldn't hide the stubbornness in his eyes. He spoke in an appreciative tone, "Do you know the consequences of the report you published?" Humphrey nodded slightly, tidied his clothes covered in footprints, and replied somewhat depressed, "I know, but I refuse to collude with them, to be a dog of the nobles, to be a worm that buries its head in the sand. I had already planned to resign, but I didn't expect them to be so despicable as to beat me in the street." Aaron didn't pay attention to his sarcastic remarks about nobles in his complaints. Instead, he looked at him with interest. "What are you good at?" Humphrey straightened his back and calmly replied, "I graduated from Backland University with a degree in economics, specializing in statistical analysis and financial statements." Aaron scrutinized Humphrey from head to toe, watching him squirm uncomfortably, and after a moment of contemplation, said, "I will establish a foot-operated vehicle company that will eventually span the North-South continent. You can be its manager, responsible for business promotion and financial oversight. When the company's business expands, I will allocate 10% of the profits as startup capital for a new charitable organization. You can observe with your own eyes, and you have the choice to stay or leave." The authoritative voice finally persuaded Humphrey. At the same time, a knock sounded at the door. Mr. Butler brought in another gentleman. Before the butler could speak, the gentleman introduced himself. "Hello, Lord Aaron. I am one of the editors-in-chief of the Backland News. Because of that morning's newspaper, the editorial department fired me and several editors, and also urgently recalled the newspapers that had not been sold." Aaron's eyes flickered as he looked at the dismissed editor-in-chief, and calmly asked, "What are you good at?" The editor-in-chief was slightly nervous but replied firmly, I am good at uncovering the truth of news stories. Although it sometimes draws criticism, I always pursue the truth. Aaron looked at him deeply, then said, I appreciate your persistence, but you need to understand that sometimes the truth is not always accepted. He paused, then continued, I also hope you can find the truth, but not to incite public opinion, but for justice and truth. I do need a channel for my voice. You can start a new newspaper with your dismissed colleagues. Let's call it, The People's Daily. Backland, Empress Borough, inside Earl Hall's luxurious villa. Earl Hall was hosting a banquet for the new party members, celebrating the successful repeal of the Grain Act. In the banquet hall, council members and bankers chatted and laughed, their faces smiling. Audrey stood at the turn of the second-floor staircase, with Susie, who had grown a size larger, crouching beside her. Looking at the festive scene in the hall, she couldn't help but recall the words Aaron had spoken that night. She couldn't help but grip her skirt, her gaze searching through the crowd, wanting to find that figure. Susie, sensing her master's unusual state, nudged Audrey with her head and let out a bark. No need to look, that polite young man didn't come. His reply stated his difficulties, and he will visit on his own initiative later. Madame Caitlin smiled as she walked down from the second floor, looking at Audrey, whose gaze was somewhat evasive, then stroked the well-behaved Susie, and continued to Audrey, if you really want to see him, why not write a letter and personally invite him to visit our manor next time? Audrey nodded gently, took Susie back to her bedroom, took out an envelope, and began to ponder. Late at night, Aaron, dressed in black, appeared in a narrow alley in the East Borough, changed his face, and began his hunt for the night. After subduing and knocking out a human trafficker, Aaron was about to throw him at the entrance of the nearest police station. Suddenly, he smelled a faint scent of blood. His spiritual intuition did not warn him, so Aaron thought for a moment and flashed towards the source of the bloody smell. The closer he got, the stronger the smell of blood became. A female figure lay by a street lamp. By the light of the gas street lamp, Aaron saw that the woman lying on the ground at the alley entrance had a pale, bluish face. There was a deep cut in her abdomen, and her internal organs seemed to have been scooped out. The blood on the ground around her was slowly flowing, crimson and thick. Aaron's pupils constricted slightly, and he took a defensive stance. Looking at the corpse on the ground, he quickly recalled the devil dog cultivated by the Desire Apostle in Backland. Feeling no malice, Aaron no longer hesitated and immediately took the human trafficker to the nearest police station. He dropped the unconscious human trafficker, left the collected evidence of his crimes, and the location information of the unfortunate lady's body. Aaron deliberately made a sound to attract the attention of the police officer on duty, then quickly used spirit world travel to leave and return to his bedroom. Back in his bedroom, Aaron took off his mask. After feeding Noob, who was sprawled on the bedroom blanket, the little fellow, who had grown a full size larger in a month, lazily lay on the blanket after finishing his meal. Calming down from the bloody scene of disembowelment, Aaron realized that he might have misjudged the identity of the serial killer. Serial killings, targeting those who had fallen before, a minimum of 13 people, a maximum of 49. The more complete the ritual, the greater the hope of advancing. There must be at least 3 days between 2 killings, otherwise it is easy to lose control, but the interval cannot exceed 9 days, which would reset the ritual. Aaron recalled the ritual for advancing to sequence 5 Desire Apostle. Even at the longest calculation, that devil dog could not continue this ritual 2 years later, not to mention that the devil pathway itself is the most prone to losing control and going mad. Therefore, the protagonist of this advancement ritual is most likely the true master of that devil dog, Jason Belial from the Buria family. Jason Belial, Aaron murmured, sitting on the sofa, his spirituality subtly flowing into the red moon mark on his wrist, entering a hidden state to avoid being sensed by that devil's malice towards him. This guy's alias in Backland is Patrick Jason, a major shareholder of a small bank. He is also the true executor of the assassination of the current Duke Negan, with the Twilight Hermit Order and Adam behind him, which is a bit troublesome. However, Keelangos was also ordered to assassinate. After being eliminated by Mr. Ask, another killer was simply replaced to continue assassinating the current Duke Negan. This indicates that the life or death of the killer is not important. Duke Negan must die. If one killer is gone, another can be replaced. If one attempt fails, there's always the next. After all, the biggest resistance to George III's reforms and the biggest beneficiaries of the losses were the Conservative Party, composed of the low and landowning aristocrats. If the current Duke Negan were to die, the new Duke Negan would not have enough prestige to suppress all dissenting opinions and unite the Conservative Party against the new party. Whether it was George III pushing his reforms and secretly preparing his godhood ritual, or the World War Adam hoped to instigate, both could proceed smoothly. Having understood the critical implications, Aaron no longer dwelled on it and began to consider how to extract all value from Jason Belial. As a Sequence 6 demon, the most troublesome aspect is the passive ability to foresee danger. That is, if the opponent can cause him fatal harm in a very short period and takes practical action, he can sense and detect it, grasp where the danger comes from and from whom, and thus specifically eliminate or retaliate. Different demons have different intuitive range of effect, ranging from a few minutes to a day, and from a few kilometers to an entire metropolitan area. As a demon about to advance to Sequence 5, his danger prediction ability is certainly not just a few kilometers. Moreover, the family's Beyonders cannot act casually anymore, especially those at the demigod level. The church is one thing, but the previous solo operation had already caused dissatisfaction from the military intelligence department Nine Kings faction. After a moment of thought, Aaron decided to go to St. Samuel Cathedral, the headquarters of the Church of the Night Beckland Diocese, tomorrow to seek help from the Nighthawks squad and apply to use the sealed artifact, 1-42, the silver full-body armor stained with the blood of an ancient god. Aaron will also participate in the operation. He can use the Sun Ring's restraining effect on the criminal pathway to cooperate with the Nighthawks squad, and he can also restrain that devil dog, which may have already reached Sequence 7. He can both digest the sheriff potion during the punitive action and, after a successful encirclement, unearth the serial killer hidden in Backland for many years, thereby promoting his new newspaper, gaining greater prestige among the common people, and laying the foundation for the future promotion of his foot-operated vehicle company. Having made up his mind, Aaron no longer thought about it and began to savor the changes brought about by advancing to sheriff. When dealing with the human trafficker tonight, Aaron felt that the combat abilities and physical qualities he gained as an arbiter, including endurance, strength, and speed, had all significantly improved. Furthermore, he gained an additional sense on the extraordinary level, able to detect abnormal factors and grasp subtle traces. When close enough, he could also detect unscreened things related to evil, disorder, and madness. That is why he was able to detect the elusive bloody scent from a very long distance and accurately locate the body. Aaron exhaled slightly, a hint of fervor flashing in his eyes again, and he couldn't help but think to himself. If I can kill both Jason Belial and his devil dog, these two cunning and evil criminals who disrupt order, how much of my sheriff potion will that feedback help me digest? Seeing the human who always fed him inexplicably smiling while sitting on the sofa, Noob, lying on the ground, silently and subtly moved away. Dash 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 dash. On the morning of Wednesday, June 16, 1346, a luxurious carriage was parked in front of the East Taker family villa in Backland. Aaron stood in front of the carriage, instructing his butler, Dido, on the day's affairs. You are to fully cooperate with that editor-in-chief in completing the layout design of the People's Daily. You can contact the printing factory in the name of the East Taker family, and you can find a vacant warehouse for temporary work. I have only one request. Tomorrow, I need the People's Daily to appear in the streets and alleys of Backland. Tonight, I will provide a sensational piece of news as the focus of the People's Daily's promotion. Tell that editor, this is an opportunity to prove their worth, and I hope they can seize it. After the butler left with his orders, Aaron, holding the Beckland Morning News that had just been published this morning, walked into the carriage. The newspaper's front page headline was highlighted in red and bolded, "Serial Killer Appears in East Borough." A man with a South Continent face, dressed in tight black clothes, also followed and sat opposite Aaron. Solo Binter, deputy captain of the Duke's Guard, Sequence 5 Chaos Mentor, returned from the South Continent to the Northern Continent a week ago, traveling through East Tarak County by train to Beckland, serving as Aaron's personal bodyguard for daytime outings. Accompanied by the clatter of hooves, they passed through streets and alleys to St. Samuel Cathedral, and after being announced, met with Archbishop Anthony. In a room deep within the cathedral, Aaron actively channeled his spirituality into the red moon mark on his wrist, creating a hidden environment. He placed the Beckland Morning News on the table, displaying the headline. Then he spoke. Archbishop Anthony, this serial killer is a Sequence 6 demon. This cruel method of killing is a ritual he is preparing for advancement to Sequence 5. I know his true identity and detailed address. Without further ado, I'd like to act tonight. However, because of the previous incident in the Dock District, which was criticized by the Military Intelligence Department 9 Kings faction, this time I want to obtain the help of the Nighthawks squad and activate sealed artifact, 1-42. Archbishop Anthony looked at the headline on the newspaper, pondered for a moment, and slowly said, "All right, I will dispatch the Soster squad. He is a Sequence 6 soul man and possesses his own mystical item. I also approve the use of sealed artifact, 1-42. Due to the demon's passive danger perception, the specific operational details do not need to be disclosed to the Soster squad for now. You will be fully responsible for the command." After getting satisfactory results, Aaron took a carriage from St. Samuel Church to the Bicycle Research and Development Studio in St. George's District, Beckland. The carriage stopped in front of a gate that was undergoing renovation, replacing the slightly old decorations with marble ones that better showcased its status. Aaron walked into the research and development room and saw an item very similar to a bicycle placed in the middle of the hall, with Harland enthusiastically introducing it to Humphrey. Seeing Aaron arrive, everyone respectfully bowed slightly. Aaron walked directly towards the model vehicle, which already looked very similar from its appearance alone. Just as Harland was about to introduce the usage of this model vehicle to Lord Aaron, he saw Aaron skillfully mount the vehicle and ride it around the hall once, swallowing the words that were about to come out. Aaron nodded with satisfaction, both the practicality and comfort had been restored well. He then looked at Harland and continued to ask, "What is the current cost of this vehicle? And what would be the cost if it were put into large-scale factory production?" Harland pondered for a moment and replied, "This current model vehicle has undergone material substitution, compressing the cost to around £1. The rubber and other raw materials used for the tires and seat cushions are all sourced from our own estate in East Tarak County. If put into large-scale factory production, the cost can be compressed to 15 souls." Aaron pondered for a moment, then looked at Harland and Humphrey and said, "Our product target is not the upper middle class who frequently use carriages, there's no need to set the price too high. Our target group is mainly technical workers whose weekly wages reach £1.10 souls or more, students from well-off families, and public servants who frequently need to travel for work. My suggestion is £2 to £4 for a bicycle, so that our target class can afford it with a bit of effort, and at the same time, they can show off to people with lower incomes. You can also provide custom services, and you need to create a style suitable for women to ride. You need to seize the time to improve, contact the factory, and you can also make a tricycle for carrying goods." After giving his improvement suggestions, Aaron left and returned to the manor, waiting for the evening's operation. The butler, who had already returned from his outing, handed Aaron a pink letter, saying as he did so, "Lord Aaron, this is a letter from the Earl Hall's family to you." Aaron looked at the pink envelope, having some guesses in his heart. He then took the letter to his bedroom, opened it, and saw elegant handwriting. The letter was from Audrey, first expressing friendly wishes to Aaron, and the rest conveying her concerns about the aftermath of the repeal of the Grain Act, as well as an invitation for Aaron to attend a gathering on Friday evening. Aaron carefully read the letter, took out a piece of stationery, wrote a reply, agreeing to attend the gathering on Friday evening, summoned a male servant to give the letter to the butler, and asked him to personally deliver it to Earl Hall's family. 11 p.m., West District, Backland, in an alley near Edward Street. Aaron, along with Soster's team of 4 Red Gloves and Mr. Butler, stood quietly in the shadows. The red moon imprint on Aaron's wrist glowed faintly, creating a hidden atmosphere. Aaron reconfirmed the location of 6 Edward Street, then turned to the Red Gloves members and said, "The target of this operation is a sequence 6 feet devil, who is preparing for a promotion ritual. Everyone must be careful." As he spoke, he took out the portrait of Patrick Jason, which he had traced from the city hall, showed it to everyone, and continued. "The human skin he is wearing looks like this person, and he also has a devil dog that might be a sequence 7 feet serial killer. I have a mystical item that can help you. We will act together then, and we absolutely cannot let him escape." Then he turned to the butler, who was holding a camera, and said, "You just stand here and wait. You can come in when I give the signal." The soul assurer Soster spread his 5 fingers, which were covered by red gloves, and encouragingly patted the shoulder of a team member who was beginning to unseal and wear the blood-stained silver full-body armor. At the same time, he said to the other Nighthawks, "You take the hot water and follow him closely. If there's any problem, change it immediately and dig a bathtub on the spot." Jason Buria, wearing Patrick Jason's human skin, stood at the second-floor window, holding a newspaper that featured the serial killer, his brow furrowed. He felt an inexplicable unease in his heart. The black devil dog curled up on the second floor seemed to sense its master's irritation, retracting its bared bloody fangs, not daring to make a sound. Suddenly, Jason Buria found that everything around him became illusory and unreal. This was a nightmare. He quickly realized he had fallen into an ambush. A pure golden beam of light directly shone on Jason Buria, accompanied by a piercing wail. He had sunken eye sockets, and his human skin had long disappeared, turning into black skin with red liquid flowing from it. The black devil dog sensed its master's pain. It rushed out from the second floor, directly pouncing on Aaron. Aaron's eyes showed no fluctuation. He pointed from afar, and a golden light flew out, directly shooting towards the devil dog. The devil dog was about to dodge when a spirit world creature, somewhat similar to a wraith, suddenly appeared beside it, forcibly possessing it and stopping its attempt to dodge. Before coming into contact with the golden light, the spirit world creature stored within Aaron's mask quickly fled the devil dog's physical body. The scorching sun halo directly struck the devil dog's body, and the devil dog let out a mournful shriek. At this moment, Jason Buria's body was completely enveloped by the golden light beam, and his body began to undergo a strange transformation. His skin slowly became like a devil's, deep black, with red liquid flowing. His eyes also began to turn scarlet, and his whole body exuded a devil's aura. The blood-stained silver armor instantly appeared behind him, and a punch pierced through Jason Buria's body. A black light flew out from Jason Buria's body, directly shooting towards the ground, but it was bounced back the moment it touched the ground. Aaron's lips curled upwards, and the red moon imprint on his wrist rippled, enveloping the area and forming a temporary hidden barrier. The black light twisted and transformed into a human figure. Just as it was about to speak, Aaron activated the sun ring and shattered the black light. Villains die from talking too much. While not entirely applicable to the current scene, the core meaning is consistent. Moreover, for such heinous criminals, there's no need to give him a chance to speak. After teaming up with Captain Soster to kill that devil dog, Aaron clearly felt the sheriff potion being digested within his body. He quickly removed the hidden barrier, as the spiritual consumption was too great, making Aaron somewhat unable to bear it. With a pale face, he handed the 2 extracted Beander characteristics to Captain Soester, summoned the butler from afar, and had him take pictures of himself. The remaining Nighthawks quickly dug up multiple corpses underground in the backyard and around the house as per Aaron's request. After taking photos and collecting evidence, Aaron immediately had the butler take the photos to the temporary workplace of the civilian daily, aiming for it to be reported early tomorrow morning. Aaron and the Nighthawks team stood still, waiting for the police to arrive, and after handing over to the astonished officers, they left the scene. Early the next morning, many newsboys appeared in the streets and alleys of Backland, shouting loudly with newspapers in hand, going from street to street. Many curious citizens paid for and took the newspapers, only to see 2 large characters on the newspaper's front page, the People's Daily. Many citizens looked puzzled, wondering when a new edition of the newspaper had come out. Looking down out of curiosity, they saw a striking red headline: Lord Aaron assists police in solving murderer case. The same newspaper not only appeared in the streets and alleys, but many nobles also received a copy. In Empress Borough, Earl Hall sat in his study, reading The People's Daily, with great interest. The People's Daily detailed the numerous blood debts accumulated by Jason Belial, under the alias Patrick Jason, in Backland and East Borough. The righteous and brave Lord Aaron, along with the Church of the Night, found the true identity of the murderer and assisted the police in killing him, with accompanying on-site photos. For a time, Lord Aaron and the newly appeared The People's Daily became the center of discussion among Backland residents, and the tense situation caused by the repeal of the Grain Act was greatly eased as a result. On Friday morning, June 18, 1346, at the Backland Steam Train Station, a densely populated area, a black-haired girl with a slightly pale complexion, carrying a suitcase, stepped off platform 2. She seemed to be wearing red cosmetic contact lenses, making her eyes look enchanting and beautiful. Louise stepped off the train, finally letting out a long sigh of relief. As a noble sanguine, her sense of smell was exceptionally keen, and the scent on the steam train had made her uncomfortable the entire journey. Looking at the note her parents had given her before she left, it contained the address of the Mistral Earl family, Backland, West Borough, 9 East Villas Street. Louise couldn't help but scratch her long black hair, a troubled expression on her face, and sighed, still deciding to take a carriage. She followed the crowd towards the exit and, from a distance, noticed a bustling crowd on platform 6 not far away, where a young man in a black suit and a top hat stood with a line of guards. At this moment, he was walking towards 2 ladies who had just disembarked from the steam train, a mature and gentle woman, and a lively, beautiful blonde girl. Aaron felt his spirituality stirred, and he turned to see a black-haired, red-eyed woman curiously observing him. A hint of surprise flashed in Aaron's eyes. He recognized her. This was Miss Louise, who had advanced to Blood Clan Baron. Feigning a casual glance, Aaron subtly withdrew his gaze and continued to look at his mother, Lady Celine, and his younger sister, Afuni, who had come to Backland from East Tarok County, leading them towards the luxurious carriage. Although Aaron was happy that his mother and sister could come to Backland, he still looked at his mother with a puzzled expression. Lady Celine noticed Aaron's confusion, tapped Aaron's head with her hand, and said with a smile, "You child, you really don't remember. Sunday is your maternal grandfather Earl Wolf's 60th birthday. Since you're in Backland, and Afuni also wanted to see you, I came along." Saying this, Lady Celine picked up The People's Daily, published yesterday, and said with a concerned tone, "In the future, leave such matters to your subordinates. There's no need to lead by example. Your safety is the most important." Aaron nodded with a smile, and then both of them looked at Afuni, who was beside them, and saw her eyes sparkling as she looked at the blanket deep inside the carriage, where a white furred cat was sprawled. Aaron picked up Little White, ignoring its protests, and handed it to Afuni, explaining with a smile, "This is a white feather spirit cat I rescued from a smuggling ship from the South Continent." I call it Little White. Afuni listened with interest, and when she heard its name, she couldn't help but chuckle. No, that name is too ugly. I'll give it a new name. From now on, you'll be called Evelyn. After saying that, she picked up Little White, or more precisely, Evelyn, and announced it with great seriousness. Perhaps feeling that this name sounded much better than Little White, Evelyn lightly swayed her tail and did not resist. After speaking, Afuni held Evelyn and looked at Aaron expectantly. Is this name okay? This is a character I really like from Wuthering Heights, which I've been reading recently. It's only been serialized for a dozen chapters, so I don't know what her ending will be. Aaron paused slightly, then asked uncertainly, are you talking about Wuthering Heights, written by Furs Wall? Afuni responded with a hint of surprise, have you read it too? Aaron cleared his throat, sort of. He muttered to himself, she really lives up to her lazy reputation. She's probably so used to delaying updates that it hasn't even finished serialization 2 years later. The carriage did not head towards the luxurious East Tarok family villa in Empress Borough but turned towards the research studio in Backland Street, George District. Aaron intended to show his mother and sister his work in Backland. At the same time, in Backland, a lady wearing a cream-colored, ruffled, high-collared long dress, with slightly curly brown hair draped over her shoulders, and light blue eyes with a hint of playfulness and laziness. This lady held a lady's cigarette in her right hand and lay straight on the sofa like a fish out of water. Around the sofa were many crumpled paper balls of discarded drafts. Suddenly, her body trembled, almost falling to the ground, and the noise she made caused a shorter lady to emerge from the adjacent room. She was barely over 5 feet tall, with a slightly baby-faced, delicate and gentle features, but her eyes seemed not yet fully developed, appearing quite youthful. Despite her messy, frizzy, shoulder-length yellow hair and traditional knight's training attire, she possessed an indescribable authority and a compelling charm. She looked helplessly at her friend, who had sat up with a bewildered expression, and began. Furs, stop smoking. Smoking is bad for your health. What happened to you just now? Furs extinguished her lady's cigarette, touched her nose in confusion. I just feel like someone is thinking about me. My writing isn't going well today, I think I need to rest. She pondered for a moment and continued, Shoo, why don't we eat out today? I know an Intis-style restaurant, their smoked sausages taste really good, and my manuscript fee from last month just came in. Shoo scratched her messy short hair and said helplessly. All right, but it has to be tonight. You wouldn't want my first bounty mission in Backland to be delayed because of a meal, would you? Furs chuckled, then slumped back onto the sofa, looking at Shoo, who was preparing to leave, and said in a lazy voice, remember to wake me up when you get back, I'll take you out for a big meal. Oh, and remember to bring me a pack of cigarettes and a bottle of red wine when you come back. My creativity needs their company. Shoo turned to glance at her friend, who was already sprawled on the sofa with no intention of going out, shook her head helplessly, and headed straight for the Bravehearts bar in Iron Gate Street, Backland Bridge area. Hugh finally breathed a sigh of relief as she received the £50 cash for the bounty mission from the middleman, Caspers. She was unwilling to let her family be wronged, so she left her mother and younger brother and came to Backland alone, with her savings already almost depleted. During this period, she mostly relied on her good friend Furs for financial help, and now she could finally repay the money. Hugh valued her friendship with Furs greatly. They huddled together for warmth in this big city. After a moment of happiness, thinking of her father's case and not knowing when she could obtain the Sequence 8 potion formula, Hugh's mood couldn't help but sink again. Backland Street, George District, the research studio of the already listed East Tak Bicycle Company. Aaron led his mother and younger sister out of the carriage and began to tour the company he founded. Hearing that the Duchess and young lady were coming to visit, Harland and Humphrey hurriedly pushed out the newly developed Ladies foot-operated vehicle, which had been rushed into production. After a detailed introduction to the foot-operated vehicle's operation and precautions, Afuni eagerly sat on the bicycle. Evelyn, who was visiting for the first time, wagged her tail with interest, and with a slight push, she jumped into the basket in front. Afuni rode Evelyn around the factory once, completing the sample's initial experience under the satisfied gaze of Madame Celine. After receiving positive feedback, the tour concluded. After the tour, Aaron took 2 ladies' bicycles and 1 men's bicycle, planning to give them to Audrey and Earl Hall when he attended Audrey's invitation tonight, while the remaining ladies' bicycle was left for Afuni. Knowing that Aaron was going to attend the party, Afuni hugged Evelyn and pleaded for a long time to go along. Unable to resist his younger sister's persistent nagging, Aaron eventually agreed. Backland, Empress Borough, Earl Hall's luxurious villa. Audrey was dressed in a pure white gown, her golden hair casually styled, falling smoothly and lustrously. Her emerald green eyes were as deep as the ocean, yet like the purest gems, her features and face shape combined to create breathtaking beauty, with an elegant and pure demeanor. Susie, by her side, was currently eating her favorite snack, dog biscuits made from flour, vegetables, meat, and water by Backland Pet Care Company. Her body had visibly grown a size, and she could no longer be called a small golden retriever. Accompanied by the clatter of hooves, a luxurious carriage stopped at the entrance, and a man and a woman stepped out, carrying a very cute white cat. Audrey, who had originally intended to go forward to greet them personally, stopped when she saw the girl beside Aaron, unsure why she felt a little unhappy. Aaron instructed the servants to take down the 3-foot-operated vehicles from the back of the carriage, and walked towards Audrey with a smile, proactively introducing Afuni and Evelyn to her. Upon hearing Aaron's introduction, a flash of realization crossed Audrey's face, and she revealed a sweet smile, stepping forward to perform an elegant court curtsy. Susie also raised her head from eating snacks, holding a dog biscuit in her mouth, and wagged her tail as she ran to Aaron's side. Afuni also placed Evelyn, who was in her arms, on the floor. The white cat and the golden retriever stared at each other, and Aaron cleared his throat, patting Susie and Evelyn's heads, and said with a smile, "Susie, her name is Evelyn, you can eat the dog biscuits yourself." Then, the group walked into the hall, where Earl Hall was seated on the sofa in the center of the hall, smiling and inviting everyone to sit. After a brief exchange of pleasantries, Earl Hall glanced at Audrey and Afuni, then invited Aaron to the study for a conversation. Upon entering the study, Earl Hall did not beat around the bush, looking at Aaron and asking, "What do you think of the repeal of the Grain Act?" Aaron thought for a moment, hesitated, and then said, "The repeal of the Grain Act is essentially a struggle between the old aristocrats who control land and the new aristocrats who control productivity and production technology. Regardless of whether it is repealed or not, this will greatly increase the conflict between the two parties, leading to a split. Of course, this is only from my perspective as an aristocrat." Earl Hall nodded in satisfaction, not continuing to ask for other perspectives, but instead sighed and continued. "Mr. Humphrey is indeed a very far-sighted and courageous talent, but unfortunately, many things are beyond his control. We are all people swept along by the times." Looking at Earl Hall, who had suddenly become emotional, Aaron smiled and said, "Recently, I had a sudden idea and had my subordinates create a new type of transportation tool, which I call a foot-operated vehicle. Currently, various models have been designed and mass production has begun. I plan to invite my maternal grandfather, Earl Wolf, one of the Conservative Party members, to invest. I wonder if Earl Hall is interested." Conservative Party. Earl Hall's eyes narrowed for a moment, and he suddenly smiled at Aaron, saying, "Of course I'm interested. What price are you willing to sell the shares at?" After some negotiation, the specific details were finally settled. Earl Hall invested £100,000 to acquire 10% of the original shares of East Tack Bicycle Company, and would provide assistance in future product promotion. Both parties were quite satisfied with this transaction. The company, established by the Duke of East Tarok family, with both New Party and Conservative Party backgrounds, had products of excellent quality that could fill a market gap. Earl Hall believed that this transaction had broad investment potential for the future, and also carried unusual political implications. Aaron was also very satisfied, as this meant that future promotions would be smoother. After the transaction was concluded, Aaron and Earl Hall walked out of the study and heard laughter coming from the living room. Afuni was riding the lady's foot-operated vehicle, with Susie quietly lying in the front basket with her tongue out, and Evelyn lying on Susie's golden fur. Audrey stood quietly to the side, seemingly tempted, but her elaborate gown made her abandon the impulse to try it. Backland, West District, 9 East Varus Street. A gathering was also being held here, but the guests present all had pale skin, black hair, and blood-red eyes. Each person held a glass, with red liquid swirling inside, and a faint scent of blood permeated the air. Earl Mistral, with light silver hair and crimson eyes, appeared in the center of the hall, and all the sanguine bowed in salute. Mistral, smiling, took Louise's hand and introduced her to everyone. "This is one of my descendants, Louise Sears, from Fenaport. She has just come of age this year and is already a blood clan baron. She will be gaining experience in Backland for a period of time." The sanguine observing on sight immediately became restless. Many sanguine who had been of age for many years but had not yet advanced looked disheartened, though a few newly adult sanguine were filled with ambition. A man with hair combed back diagonally, conveying a casual elegance within his seriousness, and unconcealed arrogance in his brows and eyes, a high nose bridge, and thin lips, muttered in a low voice, "I will also become a baron, and even a noble viscount." A sanguine next to him couldn't help but mock, "Emlyn White, with you indulging in dolls every day, are you even worthy of becoming a baron, let alone a viscount?" Emlyn then sneered, mocking with a disdainful tone, "Art, that is great art, something a pauper like you, who hasn't even paid off his debts, naturally wouldn't understand." Without waiting for that sanguine's retort, he looked down upon his fellow sanguine who wanted to integrate into Backland's social circles or converse with Miss Louise. Emlyn picked up a glass of fresh blood and left the crowd, his mind already thinking about what new clothes he should change his dolls into when he returned home. Louise watched this scene with interest through the crowd. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. And please support the author by link in description. Late into the night, after bidding farewell to Earl Hall, Aaron picked up Evelyn, who was perched on Susie's head, and left Earl Hall's residence with Afuni, leaving the foot-operated vehicle there. Sitting in the carriage on the way home, Afuni's small face was flushed. She had played exceptionally happily today, not needing to adhere to the rules and various noble etiquettes as she did at home. Looking at Aaron, Afuni suddenly showed a sly smile. "Aaron, when you went upstairs to talk with Mr. Earl, I felt that Sister Audrey was very concerned about you." Aaron raised an eyebrow and cleared his throat. "What do children know? Don't talk nonsense." Afuni looked at Aaron's expression, suddenly chuckled, and said with a hint of petulance, "HMPH, this is a woman's intuition. Also, Aaron, be honest, do you like Sister Audrey?" Aaron pretended not to hear the latter question and gave his overly energetic sister a gentle flick on the forehead. Dash 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 dash. On Friday, June 18, 1346, at 12 a.m., Aaron appeared on the throne in the magnificent palace. His figure moved to the first high-backed chair on the lower left, and dark golden mist gathered, revealing a magnificent, ethereal figure on the throne. Aaron's spirituality spread, and 4 figures immediately appeared on the stone chairs at the very bottom. After everyone bowed, this week's Chaos Council began. Over the past month, all members had become familiar with the council's procedures and began exchanging their respective information. Fei Lun stood up and spoke first. "Another new pirate general has been born. It's Kilangos, and his title is now Vice Admiral Hurricane." He then explained in detail. This Monday, Kilangos encountered Vice Admiral Dusk, and their fleets engaged. Although Kilangos was somewhat inferior, he fought back and forth. After Kilangos plundered a warship transporting supplies for the Rorstad archipelago this Wednesday, Lowen announced a bounty of £10,000 on Kilangos, and he officially became the 7th pirate general. The other members listened with interest. For most of them, the sea was still relatively distant for now, but the opportunity to broaden their horizons was precious to everyone. Seeing that Fei Lun had nothing to add, Czech stood up and said, "The God of Knowledge and Wisdom Church in Isala, the capital of Lumberg, is recruiting several experienced bounty hunters. For some personal reasons, I participated in this operation, and the information I gathered is that they plan to have these recruited bounty hunters, along with the church's bishops and priests, travel by ship to North Banquet City in West Bayern, South Continent." North Banquet City. I remember that's an area actually controlled and dominated by Masoniers, and behind him stands Luca, a Beander of the God of Knowledge and Wisdom Church. Could there be a Beander hidden among the God of Knowledge and Wisdom Church personnel who are about to go to North Banquet City? After listening to Czech's account, Aaron thought to himself and then said, "There might be a Beander from the God of Knowledge and Wisdom Church hidden among the personnel going to the South Continent, named Luca Braust. He might be replacing the original bishop to take charge of the God of Knowledge and Wisdom Church's affairs in West Bayern. You can pay attention to him. His appearance is characterized by a habit of wearing a plain white robe with brass-colored threads, completely white hair, and gray-green eyes." Louise and the other four below looked at each other. If they hadn't known that this person was the favored one of the Order Master, they couldn't help but wonder if the favored one was an internal member of the God of Knowledge and Wisdom Church. Seeing that no one continued to speak or ask questions, Aaron began the trading session. Looking at the size of the light in the depths of everyone's spirituality below, Aaron had a vague guess. Czech was the first to stand up and respectfully said to Aaron, "Mr. Favored One, I am willing to exchange £600 for a Beander characteristic of sequence 8 feet provoker. It seems the commission given by the God of Knowledge and Wisdom Church is quite substantial." He gathered the money so quickly. Aaron mused to himself, then nodded slightly under the calm or envious gazes of the others. Although Fei Lun also felt that he was almost done digesting, he had neither money nor the corresponding potion formula, so he could only suppress his slightly restless heart. Louise, on the other hand, was full of fighting spirit. She had just been promoted to Baron and hadn't even fully mastered her Beander abilities, so she wasn't in a hurry to advance to Viscount. Sid, meanwhile, had a conflicted expression. As a local noble, he was capable of purchasing a sequence 8 potion. However, the potion digestion was truly unsatisfactory. Even though he had prepared himself mentally, the corpse collector's potion digestion was still slow. Seeing everyone either excited, calm, or conflicted, but no one spoke again, Aaron ended this week's Chaos Council. Dash 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 dash. In a relatively simple 2-story building in the Isala South District, capital of Lumberg. After receiving the commission from the God of Knowledge and Wisdom Church, Czech moved here with his mother and sister, to a place with better environment and living conditions. This was also their home before his father died, and now he had bought it back. Sitting on the chair, Czech counted the 600 Loan gold pounds he had exchanged at the Isala Bank during the day 3 times, making sure nothing was missing, and then reluctantly placed the money in the center of the altar. After preparing and starting the ritual, a gentle breeze blew, and the gold pounds in the center of the altar disappeared, turning into a black iron box. After silently reciting the honored name to show respect and gratitude, Czech quickly removed the ritual, opened the iron box, and saw a dark red crystal placed in the middle. Dash 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 dash. On the Sonia Sea near the Rørsted archipelago, a 3-masted sailboat slowly sailed. A man with deep features, a rugged outline showing clear signs of weathering, a medium build, but appearing calm, seasoned, experienced, and outwardly composed, even excessively serious, stood on the deck. He had messy dark blue hair like seaweed, indicating some elven lineage, and his skin was bronze, highlighting the result of years of sun and rain living on the sea. Because he had just returned from reporting his duties at the Church of Storms in Byam during the day, he had not yet taken off his uniform, a long robe with lightning patterns embroidered on it, which was standard for the Church of Storms. Alger Wilson clutched a newspaper tightly, his knuckles slightly white. The newspaper's headline prominently read, "The 7th Pirate General is born, Vice Admiral Hurricane, Kilangos." Time at sea was always long, and news channels were exceptionally blocked. He only learned this news today when he went to Byam to report his duties. Alger didn't know how he got back on the ship. Since that afternoon, whenever he thought that he was still only a sequence 8 inches folk of rage. And that person who came from the same small village as him had already become a pirate general, his emotions inevitably became very low. Alger looked up at the red moon in the sky and murmured softly. Vice Admiral Hurricane, Kilangos. On Sunday morning, Aaron went to the East Taker Bicycle R&D studio in Backland Street. George District as usual. After a brief inspection, Aaron entered the inner compartment, skillfully put on his mask and changed into his hunter outfit, then traveled through the spirit world to the Brave Bar, deep in Iron Gate Street, Backland Bridge area. Aaron found Casper's, intending to find a target for today's acting and see if there were any interesting commissions. After getting the list he wanted and the corresponding intelligence, Aaron sat down and slowly drank the Sonia blood wine in his cup. Suddenly, a whispering sound arose, and Aaron looked in the direction of the sound. At the entrance, a short lady appeared. She was barely over 5 feet tall, with a somewhat baby-faced cheek and delicate, soft features, but her eyes seemed not to have fully developed, appearing quite youthful. Although she had messy, coarse shoulder-length blonde hair and wore traditional knight's training attire, the bruised and swollen man she was carrying gave off an indescribable sense of authority and believable charm. Many sharp-eyed drunkards recognized the man's identity, a scammer with a bounty of £40, which immediately caused a commotion. Many people's eyes gleamed with greed, but then suddenly recalled some bad memory, and shivered. Caspers compared the man on the ground to the photo in the bounty mission. After a long comparison, he finally confirmed it was indeed the scammer. He looked at the bruised and swollen man with a slight headache, but still couldn't help but advise. "Miss Shu, the mission only asked you to catch him, not to beat him like this. You need to be careful with your actions, otherwise, even if you complete the bounty mission, you won't avoid a trip to the police station." Saying that, he took out £40 in cash from under the counter and handed it to Shu. Shu awkwardly scratched her messy blonde short hair and nodded. Just as she stepped forward to claim her bounty, a clank sound suddenly rang out. Many people looked in the direction of the sound and saw a gleaming, 3-edged awl lying quietly at Shu Dilcha's feet. However, it was very clean and not covered in blood as everyone had imagined. Many drunkards looked at each other, forgetting to speak at the same time. Kaspar's hand, holding the money, instantly froze in midair, somewhat at a loss. A few seconds later, Shu Dilcha quickly and agilely squatted down, picked up the 3-edged awl, and hid it on her person again. "I must guard against unexpected situations, you know, some people lack sufficient reason and are not so easily persuaded," Shu Dilcha explained earnestly, as if she hadn't seen the stiff expression on Kaspar's face. Then she pointed to the bruised and swollen man on the ground and said, "Don't worry, he was hit by my fist, it's just a superficial injury. I didn't use a weapon, I know how to control my strength." After speaking, she cleared her throat, took her £40 in cash, and quickly left the Brave Bar, suppressing her inner embarrassment, not noticing Aaron's gaze not far away. Aaron watched this scene with interest, finished the Sonia blood wine in his cup, settled the bill, picked up the purchased intelligence, walked out of the Brave Bar, randomly chose an empty corner, and used spirit world travel to return to the studio's compartment. At 6 p.m., a luxurious carriage bearing the East Taker family crest stopped outside Earl Wolf's luxurious villa in Backland's Empress Borough. Lady Celine and the Aaron siblings successively stepped out of the carriage. A middle-aged man in a formal suit came forward with a smile. "Oh, my dear sister, and the lovely and beautiful Afuni." Then, facing Aaron, he smiled and said, "The People's Daily you started is very good, truly worthy of being the future helmsman of the East Taker family. Aaron also smiled and nodded. On the way there, his mother had already told them that next year, his maternal grandfather would officially hand over the title of Earl Wolf to his uncle, Knight Wolf. Everyone exchanged pleasantries, then came to the banquet hall. What met their eyes was a lavishly decorated space, with dazzling crystal chandeliers and huge wall hangings that showcased wealth and taste. A huge round table was placed in the center of the banquet area, covered with a magnificent tablecloth, surrounded by exquisite porcelain and silver, displaying various delicacies, desserts, and drinks. Guests appeared in beautiful evening gowns and luxurious jewelry. Gentlemen wore elegantly tailored tailcoats, while ladies wore splendid long dresses and noble hair ornaments, showcasing the demeanor of the aristocratic class. Music echoed in the banquet hall, with string instruments or pianos softly playing, filling the entire space and adding an elegant and warm atmosphere. The nobles gathered around the round table, engaging in lively and refined conversations, discussing the various happenings in Backland and topics of their own interest. As soon as Aaron sat down, he heard a commotion coming from the entrance. Originally, he didn't want to pay attention, but seeing his mother's frequent glances towards it, Aaron still got up to investigate. A man with a wrinkled suit, slightly disheveled hair, swollen eye bags, and constantly emitting the smell of alcohol was blocked by the butler at the entrance. Through the surrounding discussions, Aaron learned the reason for the commotion. The man was named Raft Pound, the last Viscount of the fallen Pound family. He had squandered most of his family fortune and was demoted to baronet by George III. Recently, he was planning to sell the ancestral home on William Street for pounds. Most nobles detested this fellow who had disgraced the aristocracy, including Earl Wolf. So, with the master's instruction, the butler blocked him at the entrance. Raft Pound. Pound family. The family founded by a Tudor descendant. Aaron scrutinized Baronet Pound, who was arguing with the butler, for a moment, then pondered. He recalled the underground palace beneath that house, the Blood Emperor ruins, and the presence of the Red Angel evil spirit within. Aaron still decided to intervene, at least to acquire that house. This way, whether for exploration or sealing, he would have the upper hand. Using the authority of an arbiter, Aaron deterred many onlookers and slowly walked out, looking at Baronet Pound and saying, "Enough. If you still want to sell that ancestral home, I can buy it at a premium price of £5,500. If you agree, we can sign the contract on the spot, but please leave here after you receive the money." Raft Pound was stunned for a moment. After clearly seeing the speaker's face, he immediately deflated like a punctured ball. Apparently, he had also read that issue of the People's Daily and recognized Aaron's identity. Under the slightly playful and strange gazes of those around him, Raft Pound took out a crumpled contract from his embrace and, with a fawning smile, said, "Respected Lord Aaron, a total of £5,500, please sign." Aaron hadn't expected this fellow to actually carry a contract with him. What he said about signing on the spot was merely to express his willingness to purchase. However, Aaron didn't hesitate. He took it, signed his name, and then wrote a check for £5,500, handing it to the baronet. Watching his joyous departing figure, Aaron narrowed his eyes, a look of mockery flashing across his face. The interlude ended. Regardless of Baron Pound's purpose in selling the ancestral home, it didn't change the fact that Aaron was about to acquire an entrance to a ruin. Aaron was in a pleasant mood. He whispered a few words to Solo Bint, who was closely following him, asking him to discreetly trail Raft Pound to observe his actions and reactions tonight. This was easy for a Sequence 5 mentor of disorder. Watching Solo Bint disappear into the crowd, Aaron returned to the banquet hall with the contract, smiling as he told his mother and sister, "Don't worry, it's resolved. I even bought a property." After listening to Aaron explain the situation, Madame Celine nodded slightly, looking at Aaron with satisfaction and saying, "Well done. You can claim these £5,500 from the butler tomorrow." Aaron shook his head, politely declining his mother's offer. He had to pay the £5,500 himself to ensure there would be no dispute over ownership later, and to secure priority in future ruin explorations based on his status, maximizing his benefits. After the small interlude, the Banquet's conversations gradually shifted to the Pound family and the aforementioned Baron Pound. Listening to the surrounding mockery and ridicule about the Pound family, Aaron, knowing their true identities, simply poured himself a glass of Sunnia blood wine and slowly savored it, feeling a bit wistful inside. As the banquet drew to a close, Aaron walked to the second floor and entered the study he had arranged with the butler earlier. Old Earl Wolf sat serenely in the main seat, with his uncle Need Wolf seated beside him. After greeting his two elders, Aaron sat down and spoke to them directly. The repeal of the corn laws has passed. Grain prices are bound to fall, and land rent income will definitely decline severely. I believe both elders are aware of the characteristics of most old-fashioned aristocrats. They pride themselves on owning land, rely mainly on land rent income, and prioritize decorum above all else. Many, even if in debt, maintain a lifestyle commensurate with their status, with thousands or tens of thousands of pounds spent annually on clothing and jewelry, as well as persistent hunting activities, social banquets, occasional grand weddings, and luxurious funerals. Uncle Need Wolf wanted to explain but found no words. Old Earl Wolf sighed slightly, speaking with a hint of helplessness. Yes, this is indeed a criticized aspect of us old-fashioned aristocrats. But regrettably, apart from a few bold aristocrats who long ago shifted their focus to industries like steel, coal, railways, banking, and rubber, the cost of entering these industries now is unimaginable, and the losses won't be smaller than the impact of this corn laws upheaval. Looking at the expressions of the two elders, Aaron smiled and said, I founded a company called East Tacker Bicycles. Currently, the East Tacker family holds 90% of the shares, while Earl Hall invested £100,000 to acquire 10% of East Tacker Bicycles' original shares and will assist in subsequent product promotion. I came here this time to invite Earl Wolf to invest in the company, which can both resolve the impact of the corn laws, repeal and form an alliance of interests with Earl Hall. Old Earl Wolf and Need Wolf exchanged glances, both seeing the interest in each other's eyes. Ultimately, Old Earl Wolf made the decision to also invest £100,000 for 10% of the original shares and provide assistance in subsequent product promotion. As the dinner ended, Aaron told his uncle Need Wolf, who was seeing him off, that the bicycles would begin promotion and sales next week, and asked them to prepare. Madame Celine held back the energetic Aphne to prevent her from running around, watching everything with satisfaction. She was very pleased with Aaron's attitude towards the Wolf family and the help he extended. Raft Pound, with his wrinkled suit, slightly disheveled hair, swollen eye bags, and a perpetual scent of alcohol, left Earl Wolf's residence with slightly unsteady steps. He hailed a taxi carriage and got in. Solo Bint quietly appeared not far away, frowning as he watched the direction the carriage was heading. It was not towards William Street, where the Pound family's ancestral home was located. Solo Bint pondered for a moment, then quietly followed. The clopping of hooves stopped. The carriage halted at 29 Civilas Street in Empress Borough. Raft Pound got out of the carriage and entered the building, with no signs of abnormality. Solo Bint sat quietly on a nearby rooftop, monitoring all suspicious movements at 29 Civilas Street, but unfortunately, he found no suspicious clues until dawn. Aaron, who had already gotten up and changed, frowned slightly after hearing Solo Bint's report, and after a moment of thought, said, "You've worked hard. I understand. You don't need to worry about this anymore. Tell Darren to dispatch 2 hunters and an arbiter to monitor Raft Pound in shifts. On Wednesday morning, Aaron, dressed and bathed in the morning sunlight, felt the digestion of his potion within him and frowned slightly. Aside from last week's joint operation with the Church of Evernight to encircle and suppress Jason Buria and the Devil Dog, which significantly digested his sheriff potion, the potion digestion feedback from his hunting activities over the past week had been minimal. At this rate, it would take at least another month to fully digest the sheriff potion. Aaron exhaled, shaking his head helplessly. Without delay, he went downstairs, preparing to head to St. George's district in Backland. Today was the official establishment of East Tacker bicycles, and newspapers throughout Backland had been competing to report on it since yesterday. Walking downstairs, Aaron looked around but didn't see Afni. He looked at Madame Celine on the sofa with some confusion. "Mother, where's Afni? Didn't she want to see the opening ceremony, which is why she postponed her plan to return to East Tacker County?" Madame Celine chuckled and replied, "Afni said she couldn't wait and wanted to go see it first, so she took Evelyn with her in a carriage. But I've already had Mr. Butler follow them." Aaron looked around and indeed couldn't find Evelyn either, shaking his head and smiling wryly. On Wednesday afternoon, in Empress Borough, Backland, at Duke Niggin's mansion. The current Duke Niggin sat on the sofa, silently looking at the Common People's Daily on the coffee table. A photo of Aaron, Earl Hall, and old Earl Wolf shaking hands and jointly cutting the ribbon appeared on the front page of the Common People's Daily, and the surrounding footmen and maids were silent as cicadas in winter. Dash 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 dash. Meanwhile, in Issaraa, the capital of Rumburg, a team disguised as merchants gathered in the eastern suburbs of Issaraa, consisting of 5 carriages and dozens of people. Czech stood among the crowd, watching the clergy of the Church of the God of Knowledge and Wisdom change into merchant attire, his lips slightly curled. Just as he was about to chat with a colleague beside him, he saw an old man wearing a plain white robe with brass-colored silk threads appear next to the bishop who was leading their team. Czech smacked his lips, muttering in a low voice, "Tisk tisk, this old man has terrible taste in clothes. The robes of the Church of the God of Knowledge and Wisdom really need improvement." As soon as he spoke, Czech felt a gaze fall upon him, his spirituality stirred, and he looked up to see a pair of deep, bottomless gray-green eyes, belonging to the white-robed old man. Czech couldn't help but want to slap himself. Ever since taking the Sequence 8 inches Provoker potion, perhaps due to its influence, he had developed a habit of gossiping recently, sometimes saying things inexplicably. Czech quickly lowered his head, not daring to look into those eyes again, and suddenly felt the Provoker potion rapidly digesting. Czech paused slightly, suddenly remembering the description of the church demigod's appearance by the Lord's attendant, and couldn't help but feel bitter inside. Could he be that unlucky? Lucy Joseph, with his white hair and white robe, withdrew his gaze. The bishop beside him, following his line of sight, proactively explained, "His name is Czech Wald, a Sequence 9 hunter. I've checked the archives, he's a down-on-his-luck noble from Intis, with a relatively clean family background." Lucy Joseph's face was expressionless, but his tone was gentle. "No, Montella, you must understand, always maintain an attitude of reverence and humility towards knowledge. That young man is no longer a hunter, he is already, a qualified provoker." Lucy Joseph emphasized the words, "qualified," and Bishop Montella replied with some surprise, "What? A provoker? But it's only been less than 2 months since he became a hunter, this." Lucy Joseph pondered for a moment, then instructed Bishop Montella, "He's a good prospect, you can keep an eye on him. If he's willing, he can be absorbed into the church." He paused, then added, "Provided he passes all his examination subjects." The convoy began its journey. Czech, who was blended into the group, didn't know that they had already taken notice of him. He was still excited by the feeling of the Beander potion digesting. The journey was long, starting from the southeastern border of Lumburg into the Fanepotter Kingdom, traversing directly through the Fanepotter Kingdom to the southern port city of Sevilla, then taking a ship to Ruindici Bay. After a period of rest in Dici Bay, they would directly take a ship, passing through the safe passage of the Violent Sea to Baron's Port in northern West Bayern, and then travel by carriage to their destination, North Banquet City. According to Bishop Montella, who was in charge of the operation, if all went smoothly, it would take approximately 3 months to reach their destination. Therefore, the church had also advanced a large sum of salary to ensure their families lived without worry. Backland, steam train station. Aaron saw off his mother in a funi, bringing a lot of items with him on the train, such as a foot-operated vehicle and a newly developed three-wheeled vehicle prototype. Aaron took a carriage to the Pound family ancestral home on William Street. By now, this ancestral home had been taken over by the East Taker Guard. After listening to Darren's report, Aaron went directly to the basement. In a more secluded spot on the side of the basement, a secret door was opened, and several beyonders of the family stood on both sides, vigilantly staring at the entrance. Aaron's pupils constricted slightly. Through the not-so-bright illumination, he vaguely saw a very large underground structure at the end of the passage. Aaron's lips curled slightly. HMPH, you want to trick me into exploring? I'll gather my helpers, and we'll go in and gang up on you. He waved his hand, signaling Solo Binter to close the secret door and simultaneously set up a wall of spirituality on it to isolate any possible influence. Leaving the basement, Aaron instructed, maintain a certain number of guards to key inspections the basement and surrounding areas, prevent anyone from digging tunnels nearby, and continue to monitor Raft Pound. After re-emphasizing the confidentiality discipline, Aaron returned home. As soon as he arrived on the third floor, he saw Evelyn, who had clearly gained a bit of weight in the past few days, sleeping on a blanket. Looking at the little fellow who was still sleeping on the blanket even though he had approached, Aaron's mouth twitched. How could she have no alertness at all? How vigilant she used to be. Now, if she were sold, she wouldn't even know what happened. Aaron picked up Evelyn, then put her, looking bewildered, back on the blanket. Evelyn meowed, looking at Aaron with a resentful gaze. Aaron pretended not to see her, stroking her little head and saying with a smile, I'm cultivating your vigilance, you shouldn't be abducted by others. Also, the gift I prepared for you is already on its way and should arrive in about 2 more weeks. I put a lot of effort into finding this, you know. White-feathered spiritual cats are inherently intelligent, and after a long period of interaction, Evelyn could already understand the most commonly used rune language. Hearing, gift, Evelyn immediately forgot her previous resentment and wagged her tail happily. Over the next 2 weeks, Aaron participated in various social gatherings during the day, often attending noble gatherings at Earl Hall's house to promote his East Tack Bicycle Company in various settings. At night, he roamed the West District, accelerating his acting. Under the alias Lucy Joseph, he became the most famous bounty hunter in the West District, hating evil as if it were his personal enemy, and earning respect. After feeling that his Beander potion's digestion was nearing completion, Aaron also expressed to Caspers his desire to enter the local Beander gathering and received a reply that it would be possible on Sunday evening. On Sunday evening, Aaron arrived punctually at the Brave Bar, but did not see Caspers. A drunkard eagerly led Aaron to a certain card room. Caspers was playing Fighting Evil, invented by Rosal, while betting on the ongoing boxing match outside. A glass of South Wales beer was by his hand, and he was living quite comfortably. Seeing Aaron arrive, Caspers reluctantly put down his cards, took a few big gulps of beer, and limped to the door, lowering his voice, I've arranged the Beander gathering you wanted to attend. I know you're one of them, and you're strong, but you need to be careful, the people inside are not to be trifled with. Don't throw a tantrum, it could be very dangerous. Seeing Aaron's indifferent expression, Caspers cleared his throat and didn't mention payment. He turned to his card players, said something, and then, leading Aaron, limped towards the bar's kitchen area. From there, they entered the alley behind, circled around to a dark, unlit house, and Caspers took out an iron mask that covered the entire face, handing it to Aaron. This is the rule there, as they don't want others to know their true identities. Aaron nodded slightly, put on the mask, maintained his indifferent persona, and silently handed Caspers £5. Caspers immediately beamed with joy. Without further delay, he stepped forward and knocked on the door rhythmically. A small wooden board on the door suddenly slid open, revealing a pair of brown eyes behind it. Caspers proactively said, "This is Mr. Lucide, the famous bounty hunter, whom I previously announced." After confirming his identity, the main door swung open, and a man wearing an iron mask stood there, handing Aaron a hooded robe. He closed the door, turned around, and led the dressed Aaron through the dark living room into the first-floor sitting room. A candle was lit on the coffee table there, casting a dim, faint light that made the entire room shadowy. Around 10 people, all dressed in hooded robes and iron masks, sat on the sofas and chairs surrounding the coffee table. Aaron, now in his robe, quietly found a chair in the corner and sat down, silently observing the people around him. Unfortunately, everyone was highly cautious, offering no useful clues. After his observation yielded no results, Aaron looked at an old man on the single sofa opposite him. The lines around his cheeks were deep, and his skin was slightly shriveled. As if sensing something, the old man's previously closed eyes lifted and met Aaron's gaze. Aaron politely nodded slightly, then shifted his gaze, thinking to himself, "This must be the old gentleman, Eye of Wisdom, a believer of the God of knowledge and wisdom, and his public identity is Grand Detective Isinger Stanton. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. In someone else's territory, one naturally has to abide by their rules." Aaron sat quietly in his seat, waiting for the gathering to begin. Seeing that most people had arrived, the elder Mr. Eye of Wisdom looked up at the mechanical clock on the wall, cleared his throat, and spoke in a slightly hoarse voice. "Most people are here. Those who haven't arrived probably aren't coming, so let's start the gathering." A man wearing a black iron mask was the first to speak. 3 grams of crown jellyfish venom crystal. "I am willing to pay £180. £200, cash transaction. If you agree, it's a deal." A neutral voice came from the corner, making it impossible to distinguish between male or female. 3 grams of crown jellyfish venom crystal. Isn't that one of the main materials for Sequence 9 apothecary? Aaron thought to himself, looking at the 2 people making the transaction. The man with the black iron mask clearly felt a pang of pain but still agreed to the deal. After several more transactions were either completed or fell through, Aaron heard a deliberately lowered female voice from the right side of the second row. "This time, I brought a mystical item. I call it the divination pendant. Its appearance is a light blue crystal pendant, and it has only one function, divination. The effect of the divination is determined by the level of the user and the level of the object being divined. Its price is £900, which is not expensive." The crowd, who had initially been confused by the lack of any mentioned negative effects, gasped when they heard the £900 asking price. Many who had been interested immediately gave up and looked away. The elder Mr. Eye of Wisdom looked at the somewhat quiet gathering and chuckled. A mystical item is a type of Beander item with relatively low negative effects. Although the mystical item provided by this lady does not have combat abilities and is a support type, it is indeed worth this price. If no one bids, I would like to buy it as part of my collection. Aaron narrowed his eyes. A lady, possibly with artisan support behind her. He had some guesses, but he was also very interested in this mystical item. He did not lack weapons for combat, what he lacked were precisely these auxiliary items. Especially after his last experience where Darren's divination almost caused him to lose control, Aaron understood that divination itself carries great risks for certain matters, making it easy to see things one shouldn't and hear voices one shouldn't. However, if he were to perform divination within the Nation of Disorder, with the Sephira providing a higher status, even without Sephira Castle's bonus to divination, he could still divine a lot of information, and any potential contamination would be easier to handle. Having made up his mind, Aaron immediately spoke, £950. Such a high bid immediately attracted the attention of those around him. A black-robed person immediately spoke, £1,000. Aaron raised an eyebrow. It seemed like someone who wasn't short on money, but compared to him, they were still a bit green when it came to wealth. He propped his foot up and coldly said, £1,200. The surroundings immediately became quiet. No one spoke again. £1,200 was almost enough to buy all the materials for a Sequence 7 potion. A mystical item, possibly crafted from a Sequence 9 seer Beander characteristic or potion materials, even if its auxiliary effect was excellent, was not worth this price to many people, of course, not including Aaron himself. Seeing no further bids, the lady on the right side of the second row announced the successful transaction and took out a palm-sized square iron box. After being passed by the attendant, she successfully received £1,200 in cash, while Aaron held the iron box, snapped it open, and examined his acquisition. The light blue crystal pendant emitted a serene aura, made of transparent and pure crystal material, presenting a soft and gentle blue hue overall. The pendant's shape was an exquisite teardrop, meticulously set in a silver pendant base, with intricate patterns covering its surface. Just holding the pendant, Aaron felt his spirituality elevate. After confirming the item, he put it away and looked at the 1,200 cash the lady had accepted, a slight smile playing on his lips. Several £10 banknotes, which had been placed above the dark golden mist for over a month, were tucked inside. After repeated cleansing by Aaron, they had become imbued with a trace of the Nation of Disorder's aura, an extremely faint presence that even demigods or higher-level beyonders of similar pathways would find difficult to detect. Thinking of the artisan behind this lady, Aaron's heart couldn't help but burn with excitement, and he began to look forward to the end of the gathering. The transactions continued. Perhaps stimulated by the previous deal, many more people began to bid, and Aaron listened idly. All the blood of a black abyss demon fish. I am willing to pay £600. If it's a clue, £200, but it needs the authentication of the elder Mr. Eye of Wisdom. A low, hoarse male voice came from the thin man in black robes in the middle of the first row, pulling Aaron's wandering thoughts back. All the blood of a black abyss demon fish. Isn't that one of the main materials for Sequence 7 which? Aaron scrutinized the man who had made the request with a strange gaze, guessing that he might be a Sequence 8 instigator about to advance to which. He couldn't help but secretly click his tongue. Did he know that advancing to which required becoming a woman? Thinking of the actions and behaviors of the demoness cult, they would certainly never inform him beforehand. The transaction was quickly completed, and Aaron withdrew his scrutinizing gaze. After a moment of thought, he spoke. A pair of adult manhar fish eyes, £200. Many people looked at Aaron, who had made 2 generous purchases, with flickering eyes. Soon, someone responded, and the transaction was completed. Aaron was also quite helpless. Although the East Taker family had a deep foundation, most Beander materials were in the family's treasury in Iriseel. The Beander materials kept in Backland were not complete. Only the lawyer, arbiter, and hunter, the main pathways controlled by the East Taker family, had relatively complete stores of Beander materials. Seeing that no one else spoke, the atmosphere of the gathering became silent, and the elder Mr. Eye of Wisdom announced the end of the gathering. The elder Mr. Eye of Wisdom pointed at Aaron and chuckled, "You go first." Aaron maintained a cold expression, nodded slightly, and followed the attendant out through the passage. After taking a detour to another quiet street to remove his disguise, Aaron quickly arrived at a room he had prepared earlier. He took out the box and sacrificed the divination pendant to the magnificent palace above the dark golden mist. Then, he quickly sank his consciousness, passing through layers of dark golden mist, and arrived at the Nation of Disorder. He sat on the throne, reached out to summon the divination pendant, and then retrieved a £10 banknote from a pile of miscellaneous items. After waiting for a moment, he familiarized himself with the usage of this divination pendant. He then let the divination pendant float quietly above the £10 banknote. Closing his eyes and muttering incantations, Aaron intended to use dream divination to see where the lady with the £1,200 in cash would ultimately go. Aaron felt his spirituality being pulled, and in a hazy dream, he saw a scene. A tall, blonde lady knocked on a door. The house number nearby clearly read, Backland, Factory District, Selesfies Street No. 122. The scene shattered, and Aaron's lips curved into a smile. He noted down the address, put away the divination pendant, and returned the banknote to the pile of miscellaneous items. He couldn't help but sigh, such a tracking method was truly inescapable. Having received the answer he wanted, Aaron no longer lingered, returning to his room and taking back the divination pendant through bestowal. Aaron glanced in the direction of the factory district, his eyes flickering, suppressing the idea of going tonight, as a strong, abstract oil painting scene emerged around his body, and his form became ethereal and disappeared. After all, he wasn't going to acquire a Beander characteristic of a craftsman, but rather to recruit that craftsman to work for him, so naturally, he had to be fully prepared to leave him no reason to refuse. Aaron raced non-stop through the East Borough, using divination to pinpoint specific locations based on the double intelligence provided by Caspers and Darren. He would find a small gang leader, knock him out directly, pin a note with his accusations and crimes to his clothes, and then throw him directly in front of the nearest police station. He immediately teleported to the next one, skillfully knocking them out, pinning the charges, and throwing them at the police station, a smooth assembly line operation that gave Aaron the illusion of screwing in bolts at a factory. Under this almost insane efficiency, the entire East Borough's police stations were in turmoil, and Aaron's sheriff potion was nearing the end of its digestion. In the East Borough, Aaron casually threw the unconscious scoundrel in his hand in front of the police station, and thoughtfully knocked on the door to prevent the rascal from catching a cold lying on the street in the middle of the night. Aaron sighed, lamenting that his compassionate nature had acted up again, then kicked the unconscious fellow on the ground before teleporting away, returning to his bedroom. After a night of rest, Aaron felt refreshed. The spirituality consumed yesterday from continuously using the mask to travel through the spirit world to digest the last part of the sheriff potion had recovered. Aaron took out the interrogator potion he had already prepared, a light blue, semi-gelatinous liquid with faint streaks of light passing through it, as if lightning from the depths of consciousness. Aaron stared at the potion in front of him, suddenly remembering something, and put down the divination pendant hanging from his right hand, divining the outcome of his promotion. After receiving a good omen, Aaron subtly exhaled and drank the potion in one gulp. The potion had no taste upon entering his throat, only a slight pungency. Suddenly, a chill shot straight to his crown, and Aaron felt as if his brain had been struck by lightning, sensing currents coursing through the depths of his consciousness. In this sensation that made even his spirit body tremble, Aaron saw the magnificent palace above the dark gold mist more clearly, and a strange feeling arose spontaneously, only to disappear in an instant. Aaron suddenly opened his eyes, covering his head with both hands, breathing slightly, with fine beads of sweat on his forehead. After a long while, Aaron finally calmed down and slumped onto the sofa. He truly lives up to the name Interrogator. Is this the feeling of a mid-sequence? Recalling the sensation of his spirit body twitching just now, Aaron's face couldn't help but twitch. Gathering his scattered thoughts, Aaron began to delve into the Beander abilities he gained after advancing to Sequence 7 Interrogator. First, he mastered the use of various weapons and became an explosives expert. He also gained a certain degree of physical enhancement. Furthermore, whether it was the convincing charm and authority of a Sequence 9 Arbiter, the extra perception on the Beander level, or his inherent combat abilities, all received a significant boost. At the same time, he also gained 2 active skills, both of which determined the skill's damage based on the potion's digestion progress and the degree of spirituality consumption. Ability 1. Spiritual Penetration. This is not a Beander ability that interferes with thoughts or affects the mind, but rather a direct attack on the spirit body. Essentially, it acts on the mind-body, its target is the spirit body. It can bring pressure at the spirit body level, consume spirituality to condense spirit, and pierce the target's spirit body, directly attacking another person's mind, causing temporary dizziness. Ability 2, Whip of Pain, causes the target to feel currents coursing through their mind, forming a barbed whip that continuously lashes their soul. This flavor is both painful and numbing, as if originating from the depths of the brain, making one unable to resist, only able to shiver and have their knees buckle. Aaron was very satisfied with the abilities after his promotion, especially the temporary control effect brought by spiritual penetration combined with the possession and control provided by the wraith-like spirit world creature within the death mask. Continuous control would be enough to buy time to use mystical items or sealed artifacts against enemies. Aaron calculated that even without using the few gifts left by God Almighty within the Sephira, his current items and methods alone would be enough to deal with ordinary Sequence 6 Beyonders. Even if he was truly unlucky and encountered a Sequence 5 Beyonder, he could still escape even if he couldn't win. Indeed, strength is the capital for everything. Aaron sighed slightly, looking at the morning sun outside the French window, then asked the butler to prepare a carriage to East Taker Manor in the suburbs. Accompanied by the clatter of hooves, the carriage stopped outside East Taker Manor. Aaron stepped out of the carriage, and without further ado, directly took out the token given by Varna, activating its aura. A man in all black appeared out of thin air beside Aaron, his pale gold eyes looking at Aaron. Joseph Will was speechless. This kid came to him every other day. Did he really think that he, a demigod, had no dignity at all? Joseph Will was about to say something when he felt Aaron's undisguised, overflowing spirituality, and his face instantly twitched a little. After a good while, he slowly opened his mouth and said, "What's the date today?" Aaron's face was beaming with a bright smile as he smugly replied, "July 18, 1346. If I remember correctly, this kid only advanced to Sequence 8 Sheriff last month when the Grain Act was abolished. It's only been a little over a month, and he's already advanced to Sequence 7. Joseph Will couldn't help but be a little astonished. After satisfying his mischievous streak, Aaron stopped provoking this somewhat rigid family demigod, becoming serious and getting to the point, slowly saying, "I've discovered the exact location of a craftsman. He doesn't belong to the Church of the God of Steam and Machinery, and I think you can understand what I mean, and the value he represents. I want to bring him under my wing, so I want to bring a strong, high-status expert to back me up, like you. That way, I can very amiably recruit him." Joseph Will's pale gold eyes narrowed slightly, not refusing Aaron's request, but instead retorted, "These are just the best-case scenarios you've envisioned. What if he's unwilling?" Aaron's expression turned cold, and he put down the divination pendant hanging from his right hand, saying lightly, "Then kill him, imprison his spirit body, and I will forcibly perform a dream divination for that craftsman's potion formula." Joseph Will nodded slightly, agreeing with his approach, then his figure disappeared, leaving only a sentence floating in the wind, "I will follow you throughout today. You can also deploy the family's Beyonder guard during the operation." Moments later, a team of a dozen black-clad guards emerged from the manor, taking 2 other carriages, with Aaron's carriage leading the way, heading to Sellerfus Street in the factory district. Aaron planned to make some arrangements before taking action. Backland, Factory District, 122 Sellerfus Street. Dusk had already fallen, and Michel Vide stood quietly by the second-floor French window, somewhat restless as he watched the bicycles coming and going outside, a faint sense of unease lingering in his heart. Severina Vide, with her light golden hair, held a thick copy of Lowen's Complete Legal Code, and looked at her father, who was lost in thought, and couldn't help but ask, "Father, why did you come out? Weren't you crafting a Beyonder weapon?" Michel Vide put away his serious expression and smiled faintly. "I just came out for some fresh air. Since you've become a Beyonder, you must follow my instructions. This will greatly reduce your risk of losing control." A lawyer is skilled at discovering and exploiting loopholes in rules and the weaknesses of opponents, and adept at using order to strike at opponents. They also possess Beyonder abilities in eloquence and persuasion, and can, to a certain extent, distort or guide the target's thoughts, making them feel close and willing to trust. And the prerequisite for all of this requires you to have a certain amount of knowledge. For now, focus primarily on Lowen's laws. Severina Vide listened attentively, making notes in her portable notebook. As night fell, the factory district presented a different scene. The daytime hustle and bustle gradually faded under the night sky, replaced by a profound stillness. The red moonlight scattered, dotting the landscape, outlining the intricate industrial buildings and chimneys. On the streets, sparse streetlights cast faint glows, barely illuminating the footsteps of pedestrians. Shadows diffused through the narrow alleys and streets, making the entire factory district appear even more mysterious. A gentle breeze swept through, bringing the faint whistling of chimneys, as if whispering in the night. Lonely workers moved through the streets, slowly emerging from the factory gates, their figures appearing tired and frail. Some had pale faces, showing no trace of their former luster. They hurried home, their hasty steps revealing their worry about tomorrow's work. The factory lights still flickered, proving that work never ceased. Faint light seeped through the dilapidated windows, casting eerie patterns on the street. Occasionally, the roar of a machine or two only emphasized the silence of the night. Aaron stood at the window, silently watching these scenes, then composed himself and turned to look at 122 Sellerfus Street, not far away. He glanced at the time and said to Solo Bint behind him, "Prepare to act. Be careful to control the force, don't make too much noise." In the master bedroom on the second floor, Michel Vide's spirituality stirred, the ritual magic he had set up around the house had been triggered. He suddenly opened his eyes, intending to roll over and stand up. At the same time, his right hand reached for the gun under his pillow, which contained the Beander bullets he had prepared, and his left hand reached for the brooch on his chest. Then his pupils constricted as he realized he couldn't move, all his actions seemed to be paused. Under his slightly horrified gaze, two figures slowly emerged. The black-clad man with light golden eyes on the left looked on indifferently, his left hand already raised and closed. This was the confinement from a Sequence 4 imperative mage. Michel Vide clearly realized this point, and despair gradually showed in his eyes, followed by a hint of ruthlessness. Seeing that the deterrence had been achieved, Aaron lightly coughed, signaling Joseph will to release the confinement. Michel Vide was startled, looking at the other uninvited guest with confusion. He didn't try to sneak away with petty cleverness. Not to mention whether he could escape under the gaze of a demigod. Even if he did, what about his daughter? Since the other party hadn't directly killed him, everything was still negotiable. Thinking this, he suddenly found this uninvited guest who had spoken so familiar, as if he had seen him somewhere before. Suddenly, he remembered that the source of the familiarity was the People's Daily. As a new newspaper, the most talked about topic in the East Borough was Lord Aaron, who had repeatedly made headlines in the newspaper. It wasn't until he met those eyes, which seemed to smile yet not smile, that Michel Vide finally confirmed his guess, and he also breathed a slight sigh of relief. Thankfully, it wasn't those people. He then tidied his slightly disheveled clothes and went downstairs to the living room with the two uninvited guests, where he found Severina Vide sitting on the left side of the living room. Two guards, though dressed in black robes, still showed feminine features, were closely guarding her. Even without firearms, at such close range, Michel Vide had no doubt that they had the ability to instantly kill his daughter. No longer holding any illusions, Michel Vide, clearly understanding his current situation, sat on the sofa with resignation, actively showing weakness. "Esteemed Lord Aaron, may I presumptuously ask what brings you here so late at night? I can help with anything I can. You can also take anything you like from here. I only hope you can spare my daughter's life." His final tone carried a hint of pleading. Seeing her father's humble demeanor, Severina Vide, sitting on the other side, instantly had red eyes, staring fixedly at Aaron. Aaron looked at Michel Vide in front of him, feeling the seemingly murderous gaze from behind him, lightly coughed, and slowly began. "Mr. Michel Vide, I think you must have misunderstood something. As you said, I merely came to visit you this time. Perhaps my timing and method of visiting were a little impolite. I also hope you understand, after all, you wouldn't want everyone to know, would you? This works out well for both you and me. After all, craftsmen who don't belong to the Church of Steam are too rare, and I greatly value such talents. We are also full of sincerity. Besides disturbing your sleep, no one was hurt. As long as you are willing to serve the East Taker family, you will no longer have any worries, including those who are hunting you." Michel Vide looked at his daughter, who was pressed onto the sofa, then glanced at the two uninvited guests opposite him, feeling the almost tangible sense of authority. The words of refusal simply wouldn't come out of his mouth. Time passed bit by bit, and the oppressive feeling gradually deepened. Cold sweat continuously seeped from Michel Vide's face, and the sofa even sagged by 2 centimeters. Finally, he lowered his head, choosing to accept the recruitment. Aaron smiled, personally stepping forward to help Michel Vide up and led him to Severina Vide's side. You have made a wise choice. I presume you also understand the foundation and strength of our East Taker family. Your daughter is on the lawyer pathway. I imagine you don't have the subsequent potion formulas, do you? If you are willing to hand over the sequence 6 feet artisan potion formula, I can arrange to provide you with all potion formulas from sequence 8 feet barbarian, up to sequence 6 feet baron of corruption. Of course, you cannot disclose these, as this is one of our bottom lines. If you perform well, you can also exchange contributions for various Beander materials you desire. If you have subsequent potion formulas, I will also help you continue to advance. Applying both carrot and stick, a slap followed by a sweet date, Aaron didn't expect them to be grateful, but they absolutely couldn't be ungrateful. With the villa owner's consent, Aaron directed the guard to conduct a thorough search of the entire villa, collecting various extraordinary weapons and materials and loading them onto a carriage. Looking at the reluctant but now calm Michel Vide, and the still somewhat indignant Severina Vide, he smiled and said, "Don't worry, I'm not greedy for these things. They will all be moved to the East Taker Manor in the suburbs. There's a workshop prepared for you there. From now on, that will be your new home." After sending Michelle and her daughter to East Tucker Manor, Joseph Will quietly appeared beside Aaron and spoke with an appreciative tone. "You did very well. A craftsman can bring considerable value to the family. There's no need to rush the craftsman potion formula. Establish initial trust before proceeding with the transaction." Aaron looked at Joseph Will, whose expression was somewhat relaxed and whose mouth was slightly upturned, feeling that he seemed to be in a good mood. So he spoke in a probing tone. "Ahem, I still need your help with something. Not today, but within this week. It might be a little dangerous, at least requiring a demigod to be present." Joseph Will's upturned mouth quickly froze, and he stared intently at Aaron with his light golden eyes, making Aaron feel uneasy. After a moment, just as Aaron was about to take out the token, Joseph Will spoke indifferently, "This is the last time this month." After speaking, he immediately disappeared, giving Aaron no chance to bargain. HMPH, how stingy. Isn't it just that I've asked you for help a few more times? Aaron pouted slightly, though he only dared to grumble in his heart. Dash 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 dash. Time quickly advanced to Wednesday. These past few days, Aaron had been gathering his dispersed spirituality, familiarizing himself with the various abilities of an interrogator, and seeking an effective combination of the spirit pierce and wraith possession abilities. It is worth mentioning that Solo Bint provided valuable reference opinions. The personal feedback from a Sequence 5 mentor of disorder accelerated the proficiency of the combined abilities. As for the effect, even the mentor of disorder, who has considerable resistance to mental attacks, would be paralyzed for 1 to 2 seconds when facing this combination of abilities, which is enough for Aaron to escape by spirit world travel. Aaron guessed that for other Sequence 5 Beyonders with less resistance to mental attacks, and lower Sequence Beyonders, the control duration and even the damage dealt would increase. After finishing today's training, Solo Bint stood quietly at the door. As Aaron was about to go out, he saw Darren rushing up, saying respectfully, "Lord Aaron, the item you requested has arrived in Backland. It was just delivered. Would you like to come down and see it?" Aaron smiled and instructed Darren to place the item in the living room on the first floor. He then turned around, walked back to his bedroom, and picked up Evelina, who was lying on the blanket. He stroked her head and said with a smile, "Evelina, your gift is here, on the first floor." Wait. Before Aaron could finish speaking, Evelina agilely sprang out of Aaron's arms, transforming into a white blur and disappearing down the staircase. Aaron was slightly dumbfounded and couldn't help but marvel. This cat eats and sleeps all day, yet it can run so fast. It's truly rare. Aaron slowly walked downstairs and saw Evelina squatting motionless in the middle of the living room, her smooth white fur slightly bristling in alarm, her tail wagging continuously, staring at the 3 cages in front of her. Each cage contained a huge lizard dragon whose skin would change color with the light, measuring 3 meters long. Even when lying down, its height was considerably greater than Evelina squatting. Seeing Aaron arrive, Evelina instantly darted onto Aaron's shoulder, meowing into Aaron's ear, as if questioning if this was the so-called gift. Aaron cleared his throat, placed the meowing Evelina from his shoulder onto the ground, and looked at the embarrassed Aaron, saying, I remember the telegram I sent was for juvenile rainbow lizard dragons. Why are these so big? He said, pointing at the 3 rainbow lizard dragons that were almost pushing the cages open. Darren cleared his throat and replied, the person in charge of escorting them said they were indeed juvenile rainbow lizard dragons originally, but transporting them from the southern continent to Backland could only be done via cargo routes, so it took a long time. And rainbow lizard dragons grow extremely fast during their growth period, with a very large appetite. In less than 2 months, they almost outgrew their cages. Not continuing the topic, Aaron had the butler take the 3 rainbow lizard dragons to the backyard. He took a box from Darren's hand and returned to his bedroom with the dejected Evelina. The box contained the other main material for a Sequence 9 spectator, 35 milliliters of horned blackfish blood, which had been specially transferred from Jerusalem. The East Tucker family did not have the Spectator Pathway potion formula, nor did they specifically store Spectator Pathway Beander materials. At least Aaron hadn't found any in the family treasury in Backland, perhaps they were transported back to Jerusalem for centralized storage. Aaron thought about it and then took out the other main material he had bought for £200 at Mr. Eye of Wisdom's gathering last time, a pair of adult manhar fish eyes. The remaining auxiliary materials were relatively common and available in the family warehouse in Backland. Soon, a bottle of silver-white liquid appeared on the table. Evelina, as if smelling her favorite canned fish, instantly darted onto the table, her eyes fixed on it. Aaron smiled and said, "This is one of your gifts, a Sequence 9 spectator potion. The rainbow lizard dragons just now are the main material for a Sequence 8 telepathis. After successfully consuming the potion, you will be a Beander cat." As he spoke, he poured the potion into a plate and placed it on the table, while also instructing, "Remember to use the methods I taught you to accommodate the potion and avoid losing control." Before Aaron could finish speaking, Evelina impatiently licked up the potion in the plate and stared wide-eyed at Aaron with an innocent gaze. After checking several times, Aaron found no problems and finally felt relieved. He could only say that perhaps white feather spirit cats, being highly spiritual creatures, naturally have a certain compatibility with the spectator pathway. Seeing Aaron walk out of the bedroom, Darren, who had been waiting for a long time, took a step forward and whispered, "Lord Aaron, the task you assigned last time has been completed. The location of that mausoleum has been confirmed, and there have been no signs of entry or exit at the entrance for a long time." Aaron's eyes immediately lit up, and he quickly returned to the bedroom, looking at Darren and saying, "Where is the exact location of that mausoleum? None of you went inside, did you?" Darren nodded slightly. "I have always strictly followed your instructions. Based on the general location information you provided, we searched an area of 10 kilometers. Finally, we discovered a hidden mausoleum entrance at the bend of the Stratford River in Whitecliff town. We simply noted the location and returned, no one explored further." Hearing this, Aaron nodded in satisfaction. Looking at the respectfully standing Darren Charlotto, he thought for a moment, took out a pen and paper, wrote a note, handed it to Darren, and warned him to burn it after reading. Darren took the note with a slight look of confusion, glanced at it, and then froze in place. Sequence 6 Faceless. Main materials: mutated pituitary gland of a thousand-faced hunter, and the characteristic of a human skin wraith. Auxiliary materials: 80 milliliters of thousand-faced hunter blood, 5 drops of black mandrake juice, 10 grams of dragon's tooth grass powder, 3 strands of deep-sea naga hair. Aaron affirmed Darren's work since arriving in Backland and saw this excited gentleman out of the bedroom. Aaron had originally wanted to go to the manor himself to find Josephville, but remembering the intense stare from last time, Aaron abandoned that idea. He took out paper and pen, wrote down the details of the matter, emphasizing that the mausoleum was the Amun family mausoleum from the 4th epic Tudor dynasty, extremely dangerous, and required help. After finishing, he called the butler to personally deliver the letter to East Tucker Manor. After making arrangements, Aaron sat on the sofa, feeling as if he had forgotten something. Just then, Aaron suddenly felt something, abruptly turned his head, and looked towards the spacious balcony outside the French window, specifically at the dark corner of the spacious balcony. In that shadow, a white cat sat quietly, its tail gently swaying, its silvery white pupils eerily looking into the bedroom. Its petite body was completely hidden in the darkness. Evelina. Aaron's mouth twitched, and he couldn't help but rub his forehead, suddenly feeling that having a spectator cat nearby was not a pleasant thing. Waiting always felt long. A week had passed since the butler delivered that letter, yet there was no reply, as if it had sunk into the sea without a trace. Just as Aaron was about to personally visit East Tark Manor to meet Josephville and understand the situation, a reply finally arrived, albeit late. Aaron nodded slightly, looking at the reply in his hand. It wasn't too late, he hadn't been idle this past week. On the table in front of him were 3 iron boxes. These contained a batch of extremely practical Beander bullets, crafted by Mr. Michel Veda based on Aaron's ideas and existing materials. The bullets inside the iron boxes were divided into 3 types, each placed in a separate iron box. The bullets in the first box had a faint golden luster, as if they had just been pulled from hot water, and were called purification bullets. The surface of these bullets was inscribed with symbols and marks from the Sun domain, forming a complete charm that could effectively purify ghost-type monsters and harm more powerful wraiths and phantoms. The bullets in the second box were entirely silver, covered in patterns, cold yet sacred, and were called demon-hunting bullets, highly effective against corrupted and fallen creatures. The last box of bullets had a brass exterior, with a golden glow emanating from within. One could vaguely see numerous symbols and marks inscribed inside. They were called exorcism bullets, which were more effective against evil-type monsters. In addition to these bullets, there was also a bottle of sun holy water, condensed by Aaron using his spirituality with the sun ring. After all, he didn't have the rich resources of the god of steam and machinery church to squander, nor could he luxuriously use various scrolls and Beander consumables to achieve the effect of an artillery barrage. Although a craftsman had joined them, those items required a significant amount of time to prepare before they could be slowly forged. Aaron was already very satisfied with such results in a short period, indicating that Michel Veda was genuinely working for him and at least wasn't slacking off. Aaron felt a weight on his shoulder as a white cat jumped onto him, also staring at the letter in Aaron's hand, and read aloud in pure lowness with a noble accent. "I understand. We can act tonight." Evelyn wagged her tail and asked curiously, "What kind of action is it? Is it like the detective catching bad guys described in Wuthering Heights? Can you take me with you?" Aaron, with a head full of black lines, picked her up by the scruff of her neck and placed her on the table. Ever since this fellow drank the spectator potion, she had been constantly reading various books and eavesdropping on the butler's conversations, learning lowness, and reading all sorts of strange books from who knows where. Evelyn discontentedly tapped the table with her paw, protesting Aaron's impolite behavior towards her, and said loudly and haughtily, "If I don't go, I don't go. As a proud white feather spirit cat, I don't like participating in detective games anyway." After speaking, she secretly glanced at Aaron, observing his expression and micro-expressions, and upon confirming that he truly had no intention of taking her, she became even angrier. Looking at the sulking Evelyn, Aaron smiled and said in a teasing tone, "This isn't a detective game this time, but an exploration of a 4th epic mausoleum. It's very dangerous inside. I only dared to explore it after inviting a demigod. I can't guarantee your safety then. Evelyn, who had been sulking with her back to Aaron, immediately scurried back onto Aaron's shoulder after hearing this and said in a sweet and fawning tone. Oh, so that's how it is. Then I won't go. After all, this cat is only sequence 9, and there's still a lot of knowledge I need to learn. I still need to work hard to help you, so I'll just stay home and study hard. Meow, and the book says that accompanying the master on a hunt is what dogs should do, and I'm just a cat. Looking at Evelyn, who had once again been picked up from his shoulder and placed on the table, still sitting gracefully, Aaron didn't want to know which books she had read to come up with these words. He just secretly planned to have the butler clean up the books in the house after he returned, gave a few instructions, and then got up to leave, preparing for the evening's operation. Evelyn pretended to flip through the books on the table. After confirming that Aaron's footsteps had faded, she quickly and elegantly jumped to a dark corner of the spacious balcony outside the French window. Only after seeing Aaron's carriage drive out of the gate did she slowly and elegantly tiptoe along the windowsill, leaving East Tark's luxurious villa from another direction. Dash 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 dash. The red moonlight poured down, and all was silent. On the outskirts of Backland, in Whitecliff town, south of the bridge, a river flowed from afar, making a bend by the nearby cliff. One side of the cliff was bare, revealing pure white rock, which, when viewed from a distance, possessed an unusually sacred beauty. At the bend of the Stratford River, next to a hidden tomb entrance, men and women in black coats, carrying various instruments, gathered around a concealed underground entrance. The 3 leading figures stood at the underground entrance. Aaron looked at the 2 people opposite him with a strange expression. Joseph Will stood beside another man, from whom an iron-blooded aura emanated. Aaron recognized him, Reinhardt Will, one of the 5 demigods he had seen on the bottom floor of the ancestral tower, a sequence 4 iron-blooded knight. Aaron finally understood why he had waited so long. It turned out that Joseph had sought help from his family. He then glanced at the expressionless Joseph Will and briefly said, "Begin the operation." 8 Beyonders descended one after another. Reinhardt Will, holding a bronze spear, walked at the very front, with Aaron closely following him, while Joseph Will remained at the end of the team. The other 5 Beyonders were in the middle of the team, guarding the surroundings, and 2 Beyonders remained on the surface to guard the entrance and protect the rear. The steps made of polished black marble had endured 1 or 2 millennia of erosion, yet still maintained sufficient hardness, showing no signs of corrosion. The group followed the steps all the way down to the underground, where they saw asymmetrical stone pillars and patterns that looked as if they had been carved with knives and axes, characteristic of the 4th epoch. These pillars stood on both sides of a wide path, and ahead was a massive, heavy, double-leafed dark gray stone door. They checked the outer area according to the established plan but found nothing of value. Looking at the gap in front of them, wide enough for 2 people to enter side by side, and the profound darkness within, Reinhardt Will and Joseph Will exchanged glances. The former raised his hands, condensing 4 scorching white flame spears in his palms, and waves of heat assaulted them. The latter's body glowed with a dawn-like radiance, and he said word by word, "No entering the spirit world. No spiritual body virtualization." A wave of illusory ripples spread from Joseph Will's feet into the deep space behind the stone door. Aaron, standing behind, immediately felt the uneasy thoughts of the spirit world creature within his death mask. It could no longer hide in the spirit world or virtualize to avoid damage. Before Aaron could react, 4 streams of scorching white flame spears shot into the door, and with a booming explosion, the heavy stone door trembled slightly. Inside the stone door, the scorching white flame spears shattered, transforming into streaks of flame whips that shredded the escaping and wailing illusory figures, turning them into scattered specks of light or condensing into crystals that fell. Aaron silently put away the sun-holy water he had prepared, as if he had never taken it out, and then watched the surging sea of fire before him with some shock. Joseph Will glanced at Aaron from the corner of his eye, withdrew his gaze with satisfaction, and the corners of his mouth turned up. Looking at the sea of fire before him, Aaron suddenly felt that his previous preparations were somewhat redundant. At the same time, he couldn't help but marvel that a high-sequence arbiter was truly worthy of being the strongest support. The effect they could achieve when paired with other high-sequence beyonders was far more than simply, 1 + 1 is greater than 2. He also couldn't help but recall the effects of the combined skills he had practiced for a long time. Sure enough, diversified development was the shortcut to continuous strengthening. While Aaron was deep in thought, the flames inside the stone door had already extinguished. Everyone waited for a while to let the air circulate, preventing oxygen deprivation upon entry. Aaron walked in the middle, passing through the stone door. He saw piles of ashes and charred fragments on the ground, making it impossible to discern what kind of monsters had once been active here, or to guess the functions of the mechanisms that had been set up in this place. Although it wasn't as extravagant as the God of Steam and Machinery Church's method of clearing the area with Beander consumables, the effect of two demigods personally joining forces to clear the area could only be more significant. In the subsequent process, the previous scene repeatedly unfolded. The group advanced smoothly, exploring one area after another, occasionally collecting Beander characteristics that had fallen to the ground. Aaron tallied them up and found that they were all only sequence 9 Beander characteristics, some of which could only be considered Beander materials, but they were numerous, and their overall value approached £20,000. As the main tomb chamber came into view, Aaron suddenly felt a slight spiritual stir, and a strange sensation emerged. This was an extrasensory perception from a sheriff on the Beander level, allowing him to detect abnormal factors and grasp subtle traces. Aaron immediately turned his head to look behind him. One of the black-clad team members, who had been walking along the right wall, suddenly became two. Aaron's pupils contracted slightly, and he was about to speak a warning. However, someone clearly reacted even faster. Joseph, who was at the end of the team, had a dawn-like glow appear on his body. He raised his hand and pointed at one of the black-clad team members, speaking indifferently, "Death." Aaron felt a ripple spread from under Joseph's feet. A piercing shriek sounded, and the figure of the standing team member shattered, turning into a pale human skin with burn marks on its surface. Rays of light shone through the human skin, like the light of the rising sun. The human skin immediately became translucent, then shattered with a boom into dazzling light, and countless ashes fell. They all shimmered faintly, slowly gathering together, and finally formed a large diamond with countless facets reflecting light, and on each facet, a different face was reflected. Those faces were dense and layered, making one dizzy. This was precisely the Beander characteristic of the human skin wraith. Aaron's eyes lit up. He stepped forward, picked up this Beander characteristic, and placed it in his portable iron box. Joseph also stepped forward from the back of the team, glanced at Aaron, said nothing, and walked to the very front of the team, standing shoulder to shoulder with Reinhardt. The two demigods frowned and searched outside the main tomb chamber for a moment but found no murals depicting the deeds of the Amen family. Everyone had no choice but to gather again and walk towards the passage leading to the main tomb chamber. At the end of the passage to the main tomb chamber, the door that might have originally existed had completely disappeared. The ground was covered in charred debris from the flames. Another diamond-shaped Beander characteristic reflecting human faces lay quietly at the bottom of the right wall, intermingling with two other glowing items. The entire passage, including the side walls and the ceiling slabs, showed charred marks. On the wall opposite the passage entrance were 4 deep pits, each the size of a bowl, still emitting green smoke. Aaron glanced at the Beander materials on the ground, guessing that the 4 fiery lances from earlier might have directly pierced through to this point, eliminating the door and several Beander creatures at the end of the passage all at once. However, no one went to pick up the Beander materials at this time. Everyone's gaze was focused on an item to the side. It was a picture frame hanging 7 or 8 meters ahead, yellowish-brown in color, with clear wood grain. The frame had a transparent glass surface, but there was no painting inside. This is the ghost picture frame. As long as you walk into its range and are reflected into it, your spirit body will instantly detach from your flesh, becoming a portrait, forever sealed within it. Reinhardt turned to the crowd and explained. Joseph, beside him, took a step forward. A dawn-like radiance appeared on his body, and golden light blazed in his eyes as he slowly spoke. Mystery weakens, reality strengthens. A ripple enveloped the picture frame. At the same time, Reinhardt, wreathed in crimson flames, stepped forward, walking towards the picture frame. A figure wreathed in flames also appeared within the picture frame, but the mirror surface was like water constantly splashing, and the figure remained blurry, unable to truly manifest. Reinhardt stopped, took out a large piece of almost opaque black cloth he had prepared earlier, and covered the ghost picture frame. The picture frame trembled a few times, but was eventually completely covered by the black cloth, returning to stillness. Aaron took the ghost picture frame, covered by the black cloth, recalling the scene just now, somewhat puzzled. Since there was a picture frame, where did the painting that should have originally been there go? Was this an incomplete sealed artifact? There was no time to continue pondering. The team continued forward, heading towards the main tomb chamber entrance at the end of the passage. There was a black stone door there, covered with patterns like knife cuts and axe chops, with a grayish-white disc inlaid in the center. The surface of the disc was divided into 12 sections, with a black pointer, just like an ordinary clock. However, those sections were not evenly distributed across the disc, varying in size and being extremely uncoordinated, and half of each section was painted with a shadow. Reinhardt stepped forward and pushed open this stone door, revealing an extremely spacious tomb chamber. In the very center of the tomb chamber, a high platform was built, upon which lay a deep black coffin. Iron-colored lamp stands protruded from the surrounding walls, holding white candles that were still quietly burning. All the candle flames did not flicker, remaining as still as a frozen picture, completely devoid of any traces of having endured 1,000 or 2,000 years of time. On the straight path from the stone door to the coffin, 3 corpses lay. Judging by their attire, they somewhat resembled the popular fashion of LotM from over 200 years ago. Their Beander characteristics had long since precipitated, and the spiritual fluctuations they emitted were at least at sequence 6 level. After all, without high sequence Beyonders leading the team, low sequence Beyonders would not be able to pass the previous checkpoints of the mausoleum, and they still tightly clutched their respective weapons. All 3 corpses had sparse white hair, dry and wrinkled skin, and obvious blemishes, like old people in their 80s or 90s. There were no obvious wounds on their bodies, they seemed to have simply died of old age. Aaron and the 2 demigod powerhouses all turned their gazes to the black coffin on the high platform and the inverted picture frame at the bottom of the high platform. Reinhardt raised his right hand, pressed it down, and said, "You all stop here." Joseph exhaled lightly and took a bronze charm from Reinhardt's hand. The charm had lines of crimson and silver intermingling, emitting strong spiritual fluctuations. Uncertain of what was inside the black coffin on the high platform, Joseph only cast the "Mystery weakens, reality strengthens" decree over the inverted picture frame at the bottom of the high platform. A gentle breeze seemed to sweep through the sealed mausoleum, and the candles on the iron lamp stands began to flicker. Joseph Will's body glowed with a dawn-like radiance, holding a bronze talisman. As his spirituality surged into it, the talisman's surface flickered with flames and lightning. Aaron, standing below the platform, suddenly felt an inexplicable sense of déjà vu. This power was remarkably similar to when Ancestor Varna will sealed the death mask for him back then. Crimson flames and silvery white lightning surged from the bronze talisman, rushing towards the inverted picture frame at the base of the high platform. Only bronze dregs remained in Joseph Will's hand. The inverted picture frame at the base of the high platform was immediately engulfed by crimson flames and silvery white lightning. The gentle breeze within the sealed tomb suddenly intensified, dispelling the invisible restraints and silence. The candles on the iron lamp stands quickly burned down, becoming exceptionally bright, but soon reached the end of their life, melting away completely. However, the main tomb chamber was still illuminated as if it were daytime by the churning flames and lightning. The 3 aged corpses on the ground rapidly decayed, emitting a foul stench, leaving behind only 3 skeletons, a pool of pus, 3 Beander characteristics, and their weapons. The storm of intermingled flames and lightning gradually subsided, and the base of the high platform slowly returned to peace. Aaron saw from a distance that the picture frame, originally inverted at the base of the high platform, had completely vanished, leaving behind only a square scroll made of an unknown material, its surface covered with intertwined crimson and silvery white patterns. Its size was surprisingly consistent with the ghost picture frame, covered in black cloth in his hand, which made Aaron's imagination run wild. Aaron turned to look at a gentleman carrying a suitcase behind him. The gentleman immediately understood, put down the suitcase, pulled out a small white rabbit from inside, and with precise force and distance, skillfully tossed the rabbit near the painting. Everyone stared at the rabbit. Seeing that it was fine after its nose nudged the painting on the base of the high platform, Reinhardt Will and Joseph Will stepped towards the high platform, and Aaron followed behind. The other team members dispersed to collect the scattered Beander characteristics and various Beander materials. Joseph Will picked up the scroll from the ground and flipped it over, revealing the front of the painting. It was a portrait of a young man with a smile on his lips. He had black eyes and black curly hair. He had a wide forehead and a thin face. His right eye wore a crystal-polished monocle. He was dressed in a black classical robe and wore a black pointed soft hat. Amen. Before Aaron even got close, he felt the ghost picture frame, covered in black cloth in his hand, tremble slightly, then he stopped, looking at the picture frame in his hand and the painting in Joseph's hand, his suspicions growing stronger. Joseph, who had put away the painting, seemed to have thought of something, and looked back at Aaron with a strange gaze, making Aaron feel a bit bewildered. The three silently ascended the steps to the high platform, arriving before the black coffin. Joseph sensed for a moment, then suddenly extended his right palm and pushed forcefully. With a creaking sound of friction, the heavy coffin lid cracked open a gap, seemingly not nailed shut at all. The three simultaneously saw that the inside of the coffin was empty, with only a layer of light golden soft cushion at the bottom. The cushion was embroidered with a worm of time with 12 rings. Worm of time. Not only Aaron, but Michelle and Reinhardt also clearly knew something. None of the three went to take this seemingly harmless worm of time, silently exchanging glances. Reinhardt Will was the first to break the silence, looking at Aaron and saying, "The letter you sent to Michelle was ultimately directly handed over to Ancestor Varna. It was she who personally instructed me to come and assist with this exploration. Before I left, Ancestor instructed me to hand over all items related to Aemon in the mausoleum to you for your disposal." Aaron blinked, looking at the serious faces of Reinhardt Will and Joseph Will, and instantly understood the Ancestor's meaning. Passing the buck. No, more accurately, it was to gain the Evernight Goddess's protection. Aaron's expression remained unchanged, but he secretly grumbled in his heart, "So I'm just a tool. I wonder what price I'll have to pay to ask for the Evernight Goddess's protection." After the family Beyonders below the platform finished collecting and sealing all the Beander materials and other gains, Reinhardt Will and Joseph Will placed the scroll with Amon's image beside the coffin. Immediately following Aaron's request, all family Beyonders, except for Aaron himself, exited the underground mausoleum. Aaron also placed the ghost picture frame, covered in black cloth, on the other side of the coffin. Aaron surveyed the empty and silent mausoleum, as well as the various murals depicted on its inner walls and ceiling, and the stone door leading to the abyss hidden behind the murals. Aaron exhaled lightly, composed himself, took out the prepared spiritual materials, and skillfully arranged the ritual. Spirituality surged into the red moon mark on his wrist, while he solemnly chanted in ancient Hermes language. "You are the Evernight Goddess, more exalted than the cosmos, more ancient than eternity. You are the Lord of Crimson, the Mother of Secrecy. You are the Empress of Calamity and Fear, the Lord of Slumber and Silence. I implore your help, I implore your protection." After chanting the honorific name, Aaron switched to normal lowness, and with refined language and a respectful tone, recounted the general course of events. He particularly emphasized Amon's mischievousness and danger, the hardship of his search for this underground mausoleum, and his noble act of eliminating hidden dangers for the people of Backland. At the same time, he arranged a sacrifice and bestowal ritual above the coffin, using the Worm of Time inside the coffin as the main offering, and placing the ghost picture frame and the image depicting Amen on either side. Gritting his teeth, Aaron took out the human skin shadow characteristic he had kept from his embrace and placed it on the altar as well, reverently chanting the sacrifice incantation in ancient Hermes language. The originally dim underground mausoleum was only illuminated by candlelight from the coffin on the high platform. In an instant, red moonlight suddenly lit up the entire underground mausoleum, casting a red moonlight glow over everything. Aaron clearly felt a gaze watching him. Before Aaron could speak further, an invisible force lifted several items from the altar. The ghost picture frame and the image depicting Amen were both covered in a dark mist. Blackness gradually enveloped both items, then quickly receded. Aaron keenly noticed the two slightly illusory worms of time, much smaller than the worm of time in the coffin, were stripped from the ghost picture frame and the image depicting Amen. Interestingly, the original image depicting Amen, after the worm of time was forcibly stripped, transformed into a special symbol composed of a disc, 12 grids, and a pointer. This scroll depicting the special symbol seemed to be drawn in, directly entering the ghost picture frame beside it, and a new, ancient and mysterious picture frame, its surface covered with intertwined crimson and silvery white patterns, appeared on the altar. The door of sacrifice and bestowal then opened, sucking in the three worms of time, one large, two small, and the human skin shadow characteristic from the altar, leaving behind the picture frame. Immediately after, Aaron felt as if everything around him was covered in a dark mist. The high platform where the coffin was located and the stone door leading to the abyss hidden nearby seemed about to be engulfed by the mist. In a flash, Aaron appeared at the entrance of the passage leading to the main tomb chamber. The new, ghost picture frame, was covered with a layer of gray and fell at his feet. Aaron did not pay attention to the ghost picture frame that had fallen at his feet. Instead, he looked at the scene in front of him with shock. A large hole with a radius of several tens of meters appeared in front of him. The place where the main tomb chamber was originally located had completely disappeared, as if it had been erased by an eraser. Was it directly concealed? Could it have been teleported to that hidden town? Although he thought it was impossible, Aaron still couldn't help but secretly think. If Amen takes the passage of the abyss and opens the door to find himself in the goddess's hidden town, that would be a lot of fun. No longer letting his thoughts wander, Aaron looked at the smooth dome, which was exposed due to the disappearance of the entire main tomb chamber, and began to worry whether the dome would collapse. Suddenly, red moonlight poured into the passage, sweeping through the entire underground mausoleum. After a moment, it disappeared, and the ethereal and vast sense of being watched also vanished. The entire underground mausoleum returned to peace and became pitch black, with only the lantern in Aaron's hand still shining. It was only now that Aaron had time to pick up the ghost picture frame that had fallen at his feet. He looked at the frame in his hand, which was slightly gray and black, with red and white patterns interspersed on it. Aaron couldn't help but recall the two worms of time that had been peeled off from the frame and the painting respectively during the sacrifice just now, and he felt a lingering fear. Amen had actually parasitic a worm of time in both of these items. If they were used without any precautions, one would probably be unknowingly parasitic by the worm of time. He exhaled, and Aaron took out the only remaining spiritual materials and the used candle, which had only a small piece left, and set up a simple sacrifice and bestowal ritual. Looking at the shabby ritual in front of him, Aaron consoled himself. Anyway, the target of the ritual is myself, so even if it's a used candle and a simplified procedure, I won't mind. Moreover, this time I gained a complete ghost picture frame, so the gain is already well worth the cost. Aaron threw the frame into the open door of sacrifice, put away all the materials, tidied his clothes, and returned along the original path with the lantern. Joseph Will and Reinhardt Will, standing at the entrance of the underground mausoleum, saw Aaron walk up empty-handed. The two exchanged glances. Joseph Will, with his sharp eyes, noticed that the meander characteristic of human skin shadow, which Aaron had originally put in his jacket pocket, also seemed to be gone. Reinhardt Will took a step forward, as if wanting to verify his guess, and asked, "Has the matter been resolved?" He glanced at the family beyonders not far away, then lowered his voice and continued. "Did that person provide the protection? How were those items related to Eamon dealt with?" Aaron saw Joseph Will, who was behind Reinhardt Will, staring at his jacket pocket, his eyes playful, and the corners of his mouth twitched involuntarily. No longer looking at Joseph Will, Aaron lowered his voice and replied to Reinhardt Will. "The matter has been resolved. That person provided hidden protection. Those items have been sacrificed to that existence as the price of protection. The entire main tomb chamber has completely disappeared, and all traces have been erased. Let's leave quickly. Dash 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 dash." Instead of returning to the East Tucker luxury villa in Empress Borough, Backland, the group went directly to the East Tucker Manor in the suburbs. After placing all the harvested items in the manor's warehouse, Aaron finally knew the gains from this exploration, and he couldn't help but click his tongue slightly. Aside from the few items directly related to Eamon, he obtained a Sequence 5 Beander characteristic of a gatekeeper, a Sequence 5 Beander characteristic of a priest of light, and a Sequence 6 Beander characteristic of a hypnotist. These all came from the 3 decayed corpses. The combination of 2 Sequence 5s and 1 Sequence 6 indeed had the strength to reach the main tomb chamber, but unfortunately, they still stumbled. Aaron speculated whether a considerable portion of the many vengeful spirits and phantoms in the mausoleum originated from the small underworld within the Sequence 5 gatekeeper. A certain number of souls, undead, and natural spirits originally contained within the internal underworld escaped into the underground mausoleum after the gatekeeper's death and the fragmentation of the small underworld within his body. After a long period of evolution, they formed the scene full of phantoms that was seen before. In addition to these 3 Beander characteristics, 2 mystical items were also harvested, roughly corresponding to the Sequence 6 level, but both were biased towards attack, and Aaron was not interested. The rest were a large number of low and mid-sequence Beander materials, both main materials and auxiliary materials, which were very abundant. From a price perspective alone, their combined value even exceeded the value of the 3 Beander characteristics and 2 mystical items. Joseph Will coughed lightly, interrupting Aaron's contemplation, and said in a calm tone, "That mausoleum was discovered and reported to the family by you, so you will be the first to choose one item from the final distribution. The rest will be transported back to the family and stored in the treasury, and your contribution will be recorded accordingly." As he spoke, he exchanged glances with Reinhardt Will, then glanced at Aaron's empty jacket pocket, and continued. "To compensate you for your efforts in exchanging for that person's help and protection, you can choose another item from the remaining Sequence 6 Beander characteristics and mystical items." Aaron was slightly stunned upon hearing this, and a smile immediately bloomed on his face. He didn't foolishly explain that the ghost picture frame was actually still with him, and unceremoniously took the 2 Sequence 5 Beander characteristic of a gatekeeper and the Sequence 6 Beander characteristic of a hypnotist. After putting away the Beander characteristics, Aaron seemed to have thought of something. A shy smile appeared on his face as he looked at Joseph Will and spoke with some embarrassment. "The Beander characteristic of human-skinned shadow that I originally had, well, it's gone. This is the main material for a Sequence 6 faceless, and it's very difficult to find." Cough cough. "I saw that another Beander characteristic of human-skinned shadow was also harvested in the underground mausoleum before. My subordinate, Darren Charlotto, has been performing exceptionally well recently. He has been a Sequence 7 magician for many years. He has always been loyal, established an intelligence network in Backland, and provided a lot of help to the family. He was the one who found the specific location of this underground mausoleum. I have already bestowed upon him the Faceless Potion formula as a reward, and I also believe that his contribution is enough to exchange for another Beander characteristic of human-skinned shadow." Joseph Will's heart skipped a beat when he saw the shy smile on Aaron's face, but his expression gradually softened as he listened to the rest. After exchanging glances with Reinhardt Will beside him, Joseph Will slowly nodded and said, I will send someone to verify it. If the situation is confirmed to be true, I will convert his merits into a Beander characteristic of human skin shadow. The family will not mistreat anyone who makes a contribution. As a self-proclaimed qualified boss, it's natural to fight for the interests of diligent employees. As long as it's within the rules, no one can criticize. Aaron, who was about to exchange a few more pleasantries, had just opened his mouth when he saw a golden flash in Joseph Will's eyes across from him, and he was back at the manor entrance, with 2 Beander characteristics sealed in boxes beside him. Joseph Will's slightly ethereal echo reverberated in his ears. This batch of Beander materials is very valuable. I will go to Jerusalem with Reinhardt will to supervise and escort each other. I won't be in Backland during this time, so don't cause any trouble. Aaron curled his lips. 2 demigods escorting. The only demigod-level item was still lying in the Nation of Disorder, and 1 demigod was enough to guard the remaining items. In mutual supervision, what demigod would betray their family for a few Sequence 5 and Sequence 6 items worth at most tens of thousands of pounds? They just wanted to seek peace and quiet, didn't they? Reinhardt will watched Aaron's carriage drive away from East Tark Manor, a smile on his lips as he looked at Joseph Will beside him and teased. Are you really planning to go back to Jerusalem with me? Joseph Will's usually stern and rigid face twitched, and he grumbled, yes. After a few seconds, he added, I've been on duty in Backland for 12 years, and it's always been peaceful. But this kid has been here for more than 3 months, and the number of times I've personally taken action is almost equal to the total of those 12 years. It's good to go back and rest. I haven't been back for 12 years. The clatter of hooves diminished, and the carriage remained parked at the entrance. Aaron stepped out, holding 2 iron boxes. Unknowingly, it was almost dawn. The sky was still covered with a faint layer of morning mist, and the eastern horizon was tinged with a warm orange. Aaron hadn't slept all night. The thrill of exploring Amon's tomb and the excitement of his gains had faded, and now he only felt physically and mentally exhausted. Aaron pushed open the bedroom door and saw Evelina sitting elegantly on the desk, her pale silver eyes fixed on him, an open book beside her. Aaron glanced at it, feeling something was off. He instructed Evelina not to come in, walked into the cubicle, set up a spiritual wall, and sacrificed the 2 boxes in his hand to the Nation of Disorder. Aaron walked out of the cubicle, surprised to find Evelina still sitting at the desk without moving. Although he was surprised, he was too tired to ask and lay down on the bed. A scene flashed through Aaron's mind, and a question arose. That book seemed to be open to that page when I left yesterday. How is it still on the same page after a day? Evelina saw Aaron lie down and his breathing steady. A hint of cunning flashed in her pale silver eyes. She tiptoed onto the windowsill and ran out again. In a deserted alley in the East Borough, a group of stray cats gathered, quiet and orderly, as if forming a small family. Evelina sat in the center of the cat group, full of imposing aura. Aaron's figure appeared at the alley entrance, staring dumbfounded at the scene. He hadn't expected to see this when following Evelina. So, this cat ran out to be a boss. Upon seeing Aaron, a hint of panic flashed in Evelina's eyes. She meowed, and the cat group immediately scattered and fled. She pretended to be calm and walked back to Aaron's side. Aaron once again picked her up by her scruff of the neck, looking at her with a mixture of amusement and exasperation, and asked, honestly, how long has this been going on? Evelina let out a weak meow, symbolically resisted with her cat paws, and said haughtily, It's been almost 2 weeks. I've already gathered all the stray cats in the East Borough. Now they all listen to me. Aaron rolled his eyes, didn't linger, and took her back to the bedroom via spirit world traversal, placing her back on the desk before going back to sleep. Evelina lay sullenly on the blanket, feeling that Aaron had ruined her detective adventure, and unhappily flipped the pages of the book beside her with her tail. Inside the magnificent grand hall, shrouded in dark gold mist, Aaron sat on the throne, lost in thought, looking at the ghost picture frame in his hand. A moment later, his right hand lowered, and the divining pendulum floated quietly above the ghost picture frame. Aaron murmured softly, closing his eyes to divine. Ghost picture frame, in concealment. Ability 1. Excluding the holder, as long as one enters its range and is projected into it, their spirit body and physical body will be forcibly absorbed, becoming a portrait. It can hold a maximum of 3 portraits. Ability 2. After approaching within a certain range, by consuming spirituality to make the clock hand of the painting rotate clockwise, one can extract and store the time of enemies who have lost their ability to resist. By consuming spirituality to make the clock hand of the painting rotate counterclockwise, one can select a target and bestow the stored time upon them. One full rotation of the clock hand represents 120 years. Each clockwise rotation will form a slightly smaller and more blurred special symbol, composed of a dial, 12 grids, and a pointer, in the corner of the painting. The symbols formed by time provided by divine beings are pale gold, while all others are grayish-white. Negative effect. Must be used in a concealed environment, otherwise it will attract Amon's attention. Cannot be used for more than 1 hour in the outside world, otherwise it will uncontrollably plunder time and life over a large area. Opening his eyes, Aaron looked at the ghost picture frame in his hand with satisfaction. After combining with that scroll, its abilities were enhanced. Although the usage conditions were a bit strict, it was very powerful. Aaron carefully observed the scroll within the picture frame, counting only 5 golden marks, but a full 30 grayish-white marks. Although he was surprised that so many years of time were stored, when he recalled a Loan soldier from over 100 years ago, a 4th epic noble, a 3rd epic ascetic, and 1 elf and 1 giant from the 2nd epic, all mentioned in Grossel's travels. This amount of time seemed like a drop in the ocean. After all, even counting from the end of the 2nd epic, it has been at least 2,600 years or more. He placed the ghost picture frame into the clutter pile, summoned the staff of the sun, and looked at the 2 Beander characteristics floating before him. One was a black-based, color-mixed door-shaped crystal, which was the sequence 5 gatekeeper Beander characteristic. The other was a crystal clear, pale gold crystal with what looked like scales inside, which was the sequence 6 hypnotist Beander characteristic. Looking at the hypnotist Beander characteristic before him, Aaron smiled. Evelina's future Beander materials were ready, and the extracted surplus low sequence Beander characteristics could also be given to Audrey and Susie. As for the gatekeeper Beander characteristic, he could prepare one for Sid Watson, allowing him to exchange it for equivalent value, and the surplus Beander characteristics could be traded with the Church of Evernight for certain items or assistance. Having made up his mind, Aaron repeated the previous operation, first extracting the gatekeeper Beander characteristic step by step. Remembering Joseph Will's words earlier, he couldn't help but shake his head. Since my backer is gone, I'll honestly digest the potion and promote my East Tark Bicycle Company. Also, I need to go back and have Dallin check when this year's Resell commemorative exhibition starts. My current spirit body strength, far exceeding an ordinary sequence 7, should be enough to take action. The blasphemy slate is still very important to me, especially the Black Emperor card corresponding to the Nation of Disorder. I must obtain it. The figure on the throne suddenly vanished, and everything returned to silence. Thank you very much for your support over the past month, dear readers, and thanks to the editor for their recognition. This book should be available tomorrow. As a new author, I am a bit excited, so I'm begging for your first subscription tomorrow. Alright, back to business. This is my first time writing a shelf speech, and I don't know what to say, so I'll just chat casually. When I wrote this book over a month ago, I simply liked Lord of the Mysteries and its characters, wanting to give them a better ending. As a complete novice, I don't have anyone around me who writes novels. I first downloaded an author's assistant and typed over 10,000 words on it before directly publishing. At the time, I didn't even know there was such a thing as internal submission, but the editor sent me a site message when I published chapter 5 and picked me up. Regarding the plot, I think I've mentioned some of it in the reader group. When I was conceiving the outline, I considered the timing of entering the plot. The reason I chose the 3-year mark was also because the justiciar pathway generally belongs to the realm of order and rules. Establishing one's own order and rules always requires a certain amount of time and planning. Even if one transmigrates to become a king at the beginning, it still takes time to suppress the opposition, so I chose the 3-year mark. At the same time, it was also to align with the justiciar's godhood ritual I designed, which requires a certain amount of time. However, apart from some events involving potion digestion and potential future plot-related events, other events from these 3 years will be simplified. While maintaining story coherence and a certain degree of logic, the pace will be accelerated. I also try my best to maintain the logical development of the plot and make it reasonable, but after all, one book cannot satisfy everyone, and a new author's skill level is limited. I hope everyone can be more understanding of any shortcomings. I am also working hard to balance work and writing. Although it's a bit tiring, daily updates will never be less, please rest assured on this point. Oh, right, and to the friends who replied to me in the reader circle about your favorite names and places, I have noted all the names you mentioned. Some have already appeared, and those that haven't will definitely appear later if I replied to you. Thank you all for your support. Actually, I wrote more, but after looking at it myself, I felt it sounded like complaining, so I deleted that part. Thank you for not finding me long-winded in reading this far. Finally, I once again beg for your first subscription tomorrow. Thank you all for your support. Inside a hotel in Assaxon Port, southern Dixie Bay, Loan. Cheek-walled, with a stiff smile, watched an old man in the robes of a Church of the God of Knowledge and Wisdom clergyman depart. On the desk in front of him were stacks of books, including various language books common to both the northern and southern continents, as well as some psychology books. According to Bishop Montella, a true hunter wouldn't rely solely on instinct or just focus on the prey's information. They also needed to understand their psychology and possess a vast amount of additional knowledge. Learning the main languages of the northern and southern continents was just a basic skill. A qualified hunter had to master various knowledge and skills. Cheek recalled Bishop Montella's subtle expression each time he received his completed test papers, and his heart was filled with mixed emotions. Psychology, for him, was truly a bit much. Cheek looked at Bishop Montella, who had already walked away, then glanced at the books on the table. Seeing that it was already dusk, he closed the books as if giving up and walked out of the hotel. Standing at the port, looking at the turbulent sea and feeling the sea breeze, Cheek, as a native inlander, found it hard to be happy facing such a scene. However, half a month ago, when he first passed through the Fanapotter Kingdom and arrived in the coastal city of Sevilla, Cheek was indeed excited for a while, until they left Sevilla by passenger ship. Perhaps it was because they had left the Fanapotter Kingdom that the clergymen of the Church of the God of Knowledge and Wisdom simply stopped pretending and directly put on their clerical robes, beginning their proud educational work. Cheek's smile disappeared at that time. As a person of special focus, Bishop Montella and several priests were extremely attentive to his studies. Cheek shook his head, trying to shake off those bad memories. Looking at Assaxon Port, where he had only been for 2 days, he didn't know much about it. He only knew that Assaxon Port indeed belonged to Dixie Bay, but it wasn't on any point of the coastline. Because it was an island, and the southernmost island in Dixie Bay, crossing it meant entering the raging sea. After a moment's pause at the port, watching the ships come and go, Cheek turned and left, finding a port bar named Oak Bar. As soon as he stepped into the bar, his hunter's intuition told him there were several faint spiritual fluctuations nearby. Out of caution, he ignored them and called a waiter to order food. The bar was extremely noisy, with a group of drunkards chatting, but not all of it was nonsense. A stubble-faced drunkard dressed as a pirate said excitedly, "Someone saw, blazing, Dannets in Harmon Port, east of us." Another drunkard quickly interjected, somewhat incredulously, "You mean, blazing, Dannets, the subordinate of Iceberg Admiral, Edwina Edwards, the fourth sailor of the Golden Dream. The first drunkard to speak said mysteriously. It's him, and I also heard that Iceberg Admiral and her Golden Dream recently appeared in this nearby sea area, seemingly looking for something. A drunkard nearby excitedly added, indeed, and not only Iceberg Admiral, but several other pirate admirals also seem to be searching. The rumor is that it's a key from ancient times. Tisk, tisk, but these things have nothing to do with us, and they wouldn't dare to come here directly. Don't we have some kind of low-end military base here? Towards the end, the drunkards' topic gradually veered off, and they began to argue about which lady in the Red Theater was the most attractive. Seeing that he couldn't get any useful information, Cheek withdrew his attention and began to enjoy his dinner. Dixie pies use much more ingredients than asalas, but they like to add some local spices. Although the first few bites might feel a bit strange, once you adapt, it has a unique flavor. Cheek sat near the bar counter in the tavern, secretly evaluating the dinner. He nodded to himself, deciding on his staple food for the next few days, took a bite of the oily pie, and finished the last bit of cool and refreshing sweet iced tea. Just as Cheek was about to get up to pay, he felt a slightly violent aura appear behind him. He suddenly turned his head to look at the bar entrance. A young man with deep features, rugged contours, and bronze-colored short blue hair stood at the entrance. There was a scar on his face, seemingly a knife wound, and his eyes were fierce. He wore a black leather jacket and carried a gleaming battle axe on his back, exuding a violent aura. The entire bar instantly quieted down. Many people recognized him, Felon Edis, a recently renowned adventurer. It was said that he came from Dixie Bay more than a month ago and had continuously hunted down several wanted pirates in the past month. Even though they were all small pirates under 300 pounds, this was enough to deter the rabble in the bar. Cheek listened to the whispers around him, always feeling that he was very similar to the person in his memory, the same mixed-race appearance, the same sailor pathway. However, due to the obstruction of the dark golden mist, he could only see the general outline and features, unable to clearly see the specific appearance, which prevented him from confirming the other party's identity. Felon Edis clearly felt the gaze as well. He frowned and turned his head, and a strange sense of familiarity also surfaced in his heart. However, due to the teachings of those clergymen these days, Cheek's temperament and attire had already changed, and Felon merely felt familiar. Feeling the faint sense of threat emanating from the other party, Felon concluded that the other party was at least a Sequence 8 Beander. Since arriving at a Saxon port, Felon had also undergone several life and death struggles and hunted numerous pirates, so he was very confident in his intuition. Especially after he officially became a Sequence 8 Folk of Rage last week, his intuitive premonition of danger improved again, which also helped him avoid many fatal dangers. Felon did not provoke him. After a simple nod, he walked directly to the bar counter, tapped the counter, ordered a glass of fierce langchi, and drank it in one gulp. Staring at the smiling bartender opposite him, he said in a deep voice, "Einit, you know why I'm here. Give me information on your other rivals. Remember, I only want those with bounties." Einit Kim, the owner of this Oak Bar, doubling as a bartender was just his bad habit, and he was also an agent for a pirate crew. Felon was able to complete multiple hunts within a month, largely thanks to the information provided by this owner. Einit Kim took out the pre-prepared slips of paper from under the counter and handed them to Felon with a chuckle. For them, such a no-capital business was naturally a welcome sight. Fei Lun took the note, scanned it, and memorized the information on it. With a slight rub of his fingers, the note turned to dust. Anat King looked at Fei Lun with satisfaction. If it weren't for this kid making too many enemies, he would have considered recruiting him into his team. It was just a pity that such a useful blade might break at any moment. Fei Lun didn't care about others' thoughts. He turned to leave, only to find that the scholarly gentleman who had given him a sense of familiarity had already departed and was nowhere to be found. Tightening the axe on his back, Fei Lun slowly walked towards the district on the east side of the port, recalling the information recorded on the note and thinking to himself, This is another excellent opportunity for acting. If this continues, my folk of rage potion will be digested very soon. I still need to keep taking missions to save money. On a nearby rooftop, Czech crouched, watching Fei Lun leave. Dash 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 dash. Beckland North Borough, the Black Knight Goddess Church, Beckland Diocese Headquarters, St. Samuel Cathedral. The weather at the end of August should have been scorching hot, but at this moment, the atmosphere in the conference room was as if it had dropped to freezing point. St. Anthony Stevenson, with a clean-shaven face, deep-set eyes, and dressed in a black and red archbishop's robe, angrily slammed the telegram in his hand onto the table. In the dull and oppressive atmosphere, several Red Gloves team members sitting opposite him held their breath, facing the demigod's pressure, and were all somewhat breathless. A moment later, St. Anthony slowly sat down and closed his eyes. Seeing that the atmosphere was no longer oppressive, urged by the other Red Gloves team members' gazes, the sole assurer Soest bit the bullet and stepped forward. After respectfully saluting, he picked up the telegram on the table. Soest just glanced at it and couldn't help but constrict his pupils, exclaiming, "Archbishop Ince Zangwill has defected from the church with a sealed artifact of Sequence 0. All the Red Gloves below looked at each other, their faces filled with disbelief. Anthony opened his eyes, black flames seemingly burning within them, and coldly uttered two words, "Traitor." Dash 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 dash. Beckland Empress Borough, inside the luxurious villa of the East Taker family. As a favored one of the Evernight Goddess, Aaron was naturally qualified to know about this matter. He casually scanned it and then threw the telegram in his hand into the distant fireplace. Watching the paper turn to ashes, Aaron couldn't help but shake his head. What a grand play. He then ignored the matter and picked up a newspaper that Darren had just given him this morning from the table. The newspaper had specially highlighted the title in red, Rosal the Great Memorial Exhibition to be held at the Royal Museum on September 15. Hosted by the Church of Steam and Machinery, the exhibition would feature Rosal's original inventions and various relics, open for only one day. Mr. Horace Hayden, honorary professor of the physics department at Beckland University, emphasized the preciousness of this exhibition in the newspaper's exclusive interview column and hoped that more people would experience the charm of machinery. Aaron couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth when he saw this name. Horace Hayden was none other than the member of the Church of the God of Steam and Machinery's Holy Council, the Archbishop of the Beckland Diocese. To seize this annual publicity opportunity, this Archbishop personally entered the fray. After all, in terms of popularity and appeal among ordinary people, as an honorary professor of the physics department at Beckland University, he far surpassed other bishops and priests. He folded the newspaper and placed it, along with a written letter, into a delicate silk pouch. A miniature white cat was hand-embroidered on the front of the pouch. A white shadow flashed, and Evelyn jumped onto the desk, looking at the small pouch in front of her, muttering somewhat reluctantly, "Aaron, you're not going to make me deliver letters again, are you? Delivering letters is something you humans do, I'm just a cat." Aaron tapped her head and said with a smile, "Why have you become a broken record now? You've been delivering letters for so many days, why are you still asking such questions? After you deliver the letter to Miss Audrey, you can go play with Susie. Don't you like playing with her the most?" Evelyn, as if resigned to her fate, put on the small pouch herself, then indignantly slapped the table with her paw, complaining, "But that doesn't mean I have to deliver letters every day, and playing with Susie every day gets boring." She then looked at her small body and said even more discontentedly in a loud voice, "Susie has gotten so big lately, I don't know what she's been eating. Unless I lie on her head, I have to keep looking up at her. And Susie especially likes to lick people, no, lick cats. Every time I go to play with her, she licks me all wet, making me too embarrassed to go to East Borough to see my subordinates." Watching Evelyn stand on her hind legs with her paws on her hips, Aaron chuckled and leaned back on the sofa, saying in a teasing tone, "Let me think, who was it a few weeks ago who wanted the Sequence 8 telepathos potion? Evelyn seemed to have been struck by a blow to the head. Her previous momentum instantly dissipated. She jumped onto the sofa with her small pouch on her back and rubbed her head against Aaron's hand. It's me, it's me. I'll definitely deliver the letter to Miss Audrey. When can I get that potion? Aaron pulled out another piece of letter paper, wrote a letter, and tucked it into Evelyn's small pouch, replying with a smile. Your performance has been good lately, and the potion has been fully digested. I'll give it to you tomorrow then. I've written another letter to Audrey. Susie shouldn't lick you all covered in saliva anymore, and Audrey will arrange for a maid to bathe you. And, before Aaron could finish speaking, a white shadow darted out, leaving only her echo behind. I know, it's just that I can't speak. You have to say it every time. Dash 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 dash. Beckland Empress Borough, the luxurious villa of Rural Hall. The window of the second-floor bedroom was gently tapped. Audrey, who was engrossed in a book on mysticism at her desk, heard the familiar tapping and rose with a smile on her face. The golden retriever lying at her feet lifted its head from its food and immediately stood up, panting with its tongue out, looking expectant. Audrey opened the window, and a cute white cat with a small backpack sat primly on the windowsill. It meowed, as if saying hello, and then jumped onto the desk. With a serene and elegant smile, Audrey picked up Evelyn, removed the small backpack from her, and placed her beside Susie, saying with a smile, Susie, look who's here. Susie barked, happily circled once, then seemed to remember something, bit off a piece of her favorite dog biscuit, placed it in front of Evelyn, and barked excitedly again. Evelyn looked at her much-grown playmate, then at her own petite body, and hesitantly took a bite of the dog biscuit. It seemed to taste okay. Audrey opened the envelope, took out the 2 letters and a newspaper inside, and unfolded the letters to read them. Soon, a blush appeared on her delicate face. Audrey then guiltily glanced around, only relaxing and continuing to read when she didn't see her personal maid, Annie. After about 3/4 of an hour, Audrey finished reading all the letters and the newspaper with a flushed face. She tucked one of the letters into an old book she rarely read and placed it in a corner of the bookshelf. Leaving the newspaper on the desk, Audrey washed her face. Once her complexion returned to normal, she hummed a song and walked out of the bedroom with the other letter. As soon as Audrey stepped out of her bedroom, she heard the voice of her personal maid, Anne, from the corridor not far away. Susie, look at the mess you've made. I'm definitely going to tell the young lady to discipline you properly. Audrey's mouth twitched. She hurried forward and saw Susie squatting innocently on the carpet, while Evelyn, whose entire body was sticky from being licked, lay on Susie's head with an equally innocent expression. Not far away, there were fragments scattered on the floor. Audrey remembered that there had been a vase there. Instantly understanding what had happened, Audrey said to Anne in a gentle tone, "It's all right, Anne. I'll discipline Susie properly." Seeing that the young lady had spoken, Anne said no more and began to clean up. Susie obediently followed Audrey back to the bedroom. Audrey reluctantly scolded it for a bit, then put Evelyn into Susie's private bathroom. She had the maid wash the saliva off Evelyn, while looking at Susie and saying, "You can't lick Evelyn anymore, understood?" Susie barked, stuck out its tongue, and nodded its head, sitting upright beside Audrey. Dash 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 dash. Looking at the vanished Evelyn, Aaron swallowed the rest of his words, smiled, shook his head, and walked into the changing room to put on his hunter outfit. During this time, he had been learning various interrogation techniques and had interrogated many petty criminals, but his digestion progress was slow. Aaron guessed that only interrogating a Beander would speed up his digestion. Coupled with the subsequent acting requirements of a judge, Aaron, after discussing with his father, decided to have Joseph Will, who had just returned to Backland, personally negotiate with Major General Jonas Coleridge, the Deputy Director of Military Intelligence Department 9. With the support of the East-Taker family faction within Military Intelligence Department 9 and the East-Taker family's long-standing influence rooted in the military. After some wrangling and exchange of interests, Aaron was granted the rank of major and joined the Abnormal Affairs Tribunal within Military Intelligence Department 9, specializing in handling Beander cases. Actually, with his identity as a favored one of the Evernight goddess, joining the Nighthawks team to handle Beander cases could also aid digestion, but gaining military rank and position now would be more helpful for his future actions in the South Continent. Weighing the pros and cons, he still chose to join Military Intelligence Department 9. Next week, Aaron would officially assume his post. Seeing that it was still early outside, Aaron decided to gather more information. He put on his mask and the vest he hadn't used in a long time, Lucy Joseph. Aaron's figure became ethereal, and he arrived at the Brave Bar, deep within Iron Gate Street in the Backland Bridge area. Caspers Canley behind the counter looked at Aaron with surprise and couldn't help but say, "Lucy, you're not dead." Realizing he seemed to have said something wrong, he cleared his throat and immediately corrected himself. No, I thought you hadn't appeared because you were being hunted by enemies and had left Backland. Seeing you again, I really am." Aaron interrupted him with a face full of black lines, a glass of Sonia blood wine. Caspers gave an awkward smile, quickly served a glass of Sonia blood wine, and said it was on him, celebrating the return of the hunter Lucide. Aaron ignored the boss's little trick and directly asked, "Has anything interesting happened in Backland recently?" Caspars's eyes immediately lit up. He mysteriously invited Aaron to a private room and whispered, "There really is. Recently, many people have come to me to offer bounties for finding someone. The bounty amount is a full £1,000, and I think they can offer even more." Saying that, he took out a portrait from a cabinet in the room. The painting showed a thin old man with completely white and messy hair, wrapped in a thick overcoat. Caspers looked at Aaron, who was frowning and staring at the painting, and smiled. The person offering the bounty also provided a piece of information. He is very afraid of cold, and even now he wears very thick clothing. He loves to eat sugar, as if he is a steam engine and candy is high-quality coal. Listening to Caspars's introduction, Aaron finally understood the source of that inexplicable sense of familiarity in his heart, and he secretly thought to himself, "This should be Tirani von Helmholtz, the greatest scientist, mathematician, and mechanician after Emperor Rosal, the father of the second-generation differential engine. He is also the human incarnation of Orange Light, Hilarion. Could it be that this person is in Backland now?" 2 years later, his third-generation differential engine manuscript will be fiercely contested by the LotM military and INTIS spy organizations, involving many parties. I hope he doesn't get discovered this time, or it will definitely cause a big mess and affect my plans. Seeing that there was no other news, Aaron walked out of the room and met a short lady with short golden hair. Aaron nodded slightly and walked straight past her. Hugh was stunned for a moment, clearly recognizing this once very famous hunter. Feeling the pressure emanating from the other party, Hugh couldn't help but feel a wave of frustration. She quickly walked to the counter. Without any pleasantries, Hugh directly handed in the mission, exchanged for the bounty, and left the Brave Bar. After circling twice to make sure no one was following her, she walked towards the house she shared with Furs. Arriving at the doorstep, Hugh found a letter for Furs in the mailbox and took it out. As soon as she pushed open the door, a strong smell of mixed cigarette and alcohol assailed her, making Hugh frown. Hugh quickly opened the window, threw the empty wine bottles and cigarette packs aside, and somewhat helplessly woke her friend who was slumped on the sofa, stuffing the letter into her hand. Furs, still groggy, mumbled about how she had destroyed an author's inspiration while tearing open the letter in her hand. Suddenly, Furs's hands began to tremble. Hugh quickly noticed her friend's abnormality and hurried over to look at Furs. On the envelope, there was a single sentence: "Mrs. Annalise is critically ill and wishes to see you one last time. Dash 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 dash." It was raining continuously. Furs wore a beige, long dress with a ruffled stand-up collar, her brown hair slightly curled and draped, and her light blue eyes revealed sorrow. Looking at the emaciated old woman on the bed, whose hands tightly clasped hers, Furs's heart couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness. Mrs. Anneliese had once brought her, who had lost her mother, an unforgettable period of warmth. That was also the happiest time for her before she met Hugh. The old woman on the bed had a serene expression, even a hint of detachment that comes from seeing through life and death. She looked kindly at Furs and said weakly, "Child, don't be sad for me. It is my blessing to see you before I go. After I die, take a glowing item from my body. That is my last gift to you. Take this bracelet on my hand as well. It can protect your safety, but you must never use it unless your life is in danger. The method of use is in a black-covered book in the cabinet. If someone claiming to be my relative comes to find you, you can give him a bronze-green hard-covered notebook from the cabinet and other relics." The old woman seemed to say something else at the end, but her voice was already as faint as a wisp of smoke, making it impossible to hear clearly. The tightly clasped hands slowly lost their strength. Furs felt as if a part of her heart had become empty, and a crystalline light appeared in Mrs. Anneliese's palm. Before she could release her inner emotions, that light merged into her and Mrs. Anneliese's clasped hands. Immediately, indescribable whispers assailed her. Furs, who was unclear about the situation, felt her brain twitching, and could only grit her teeth and endure. After an unknown amount of time, Furs opened her slightly blurry eyes and found herself on the ground, drenched in sweat. Furs gritted her teeth and stood up, planning to go to the next room to change into clean clothes first, then deal with Mrs. Anneliese's funeral arrangements and consider what had just happened. Just as she was leaning against the wall, trying to catch her breath, a slightly ethereal door opened with her hands as the two ends. Furs directly fell through, landing squarely on the floor of the next room. Furs's forehead was swollen. She looked incredulously at the illusory door on the wall that was about to close and at her own hands, momentarily forgetting to even cry out in pain. Backland, Green Cemetery. It had been raining for 2 days, and a faint dampness rose from the bluestone slabs. The tombstones and stone carvings in the cemetery seemed even more ancient and solemn due to the rain's cleansing. Furs changed into an elegant black dress, holding an umbrella in her left hand and a fresh flower in her right, the kind Mrs. Anneliese liked best when she was alive. The priest of the Church of the God of Steam and Machinery softly recited the eulogy. After thanking the priests, Furs placed the flower before the new tombstone and stood there for a long time. Her fingers fumbled with a silver bracelet on her wrist. It had 5 dark green, rough stones, their surfaces covered in burn marks and uneven. After discovering she possessed peculiar abilities, she found the black-covered book Mrs. Anneliese had mentioned. Through the descriptions recorded within, Furs understood her current state. She had become a Sequence 9 apprentice, possessing the ability to open a door, and could pass through obstacles by leveraging the unique properties of the spirit world. She also learned the ability of the bracelet on her wrist. By tearing off a stone and chanting, "Door," in ancient Hermes, she could travel to her desired location via the spirit world, thereby escaping irresistible dangers. However, Mrs. Anneliese had also specifically emphasized the cost of using it in her notes. After use, one would suffer the blood moon curse, and every bloody full moon, they would begin to hear the mad ravings of the full moon. After handling Mrs. Anneliese's funeral arrangements and taking her belongings, including the bronze-green hard-covered notebook, she boarded a carriage back to her rented apartment. Furs stood outside the door, looking at the already dark night and the lights on in the west side room on the first floor, suddenly revealing a mischievous smile. She went around to the west side of the room, placed her hands on the wall, and a phantom doorway appeared. Furs walked in, planning to give her friend a surprise. Inside the bedroom, Xiong was wondering why Furs hadn't returned home for several days and if something unexpected had happened. Suddenly, Xiong felt the hairs on her body stand on end. She pushed off with her feet, propped herself up with her hands, and sprang backward, half turning her body, delivering a sharp elbow strike, while simultaneously reaching for the triangular dagger strapped to her calf. Splat! She leaned against a warm body, hitting the other person, who let out a familiar cry of pain and fell to the ground. Xiong stopped her subsequent movements, halted her hand reaching for the triangular dagger, and looked with surprise at her friend, who was clutching her stomach, writhing in pain, and teary-eyed. Xiong's mouth twitched involuntarily, and she asked somewhat awkwardly, "Furs, how did you get in?" Furs could swear to the heavens that the injuries and beatings she had received these past few days were more than she had accumulated in the past year combined. Without answering immediately, she paused for a moment, clutching her stomach, slowly standing up by leaning on the wall, and complained. "Xiong, are you crazy? You just attacked without even looking clearly. And with such heavy hands. Who told you to appear silently behind me? Going all out against unknown danger is a basic skill for every bounty hunter, okay?" Xiong defended herself somewhat awkwardly, then righteously questioned. "And why didn't you use the door? You really scared me just now." Furs blinked, suddenly at a loss for words. Dash 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 dash. West District, Backland, Beloto Street. Aaron stepped out of the luxurious carriage and scrutinized the unassuming three-story building before him. Its entrance bore no identifying marks, only a simple door plate, 9. Today was his first day officially joining Military Intelligence Department 9's Internal, Abnormal Affairs Tribunal. In front of the building stood a man in a Lowen Major's military uniform, smiling, seemingly waiting for Aaron. Upon seeing Aaron alight from the carriage, he proactively stepped forward and introduced himself. "Hello, Lord Aaron, I am Glenwell, leader of the 4th Special Investigation Team of the Abnormal Affairs Tribunal, a Sequence 6 conspirer. I will be guiding Lord Aaron today to tour and familiarize himself with Military Intelligence Department 9 and our department, the Abnormal Affairs Tribunal. Under normal circumstances, joining Military Intelligence Department 9 was equivalent to joining the military system. When military officers met, they would typically address each other by their rank, not their noble title. Therefore, hearing the other party's address, Aaron asked with interest. "Are you also a member of the East Taker family? How did you end up joining Military Intelligence Department 9 in Backland?" His question was not without reason. As the East Taker family, which had a strained relationship with the King's faction, even if they joined Military Intelligence Department 9, their first choice would be Military Intelligence Department 9 in East Tarak County and the South Continent. The King's faction's extremely powerful Lowen Military Intelligence Department 9 would certainly find ways to make things difficult at every turn, making it not a good choice for promotion. Even Aaron joined only for the digestion of his Beander potion and the accumulation of experience. Glenwell walked ahead, leading the way for Aaron, and turned back with a smile, saying, "Yes, Lord Aaron, my grandfather is Joseph Will. I joined Military Intelligence Department 9 at 21, went to the South Continent for training, became a captain at 25, was promoted to major for excellent performance, and was seconded back to Backland. I've been working here for 5 years now." Upon hearing the first part of the sentence, Aaron's expression immediately became a little strange. Looking at the smiling, enthusiastic Glenwell before him, it was hard to see any blood relation to the rigid and serious Joseph Will. Aaron muttered in his heart, perhaps it was due to the Beander pathway. The Hunter pathway seemed to enjoy smiling. The Glenwell before him was like this, and so were Danitz and Anderson Hood. The Red Angel evil spirit still smiled every day even after turning into that monstrous appearance. However, the ancestor wore a mask, so it was impossible to tell if he was smiling. He probably was, if mockery counted. Each and every one of them was a smiling tiger, skilled at scheming. No, except for Danitz, he didn't have that kind of brain. Hearing the latter part of the conversation, Aaron glanced at the major's military uniform he was wearing. A young, experienced officer had made no progress for 5 whole years, which was clear evidence of the King's faction's suppression of him. Glenwell seemed to have just said it casually, but Aaron could clearly sense the bitterness beneath his smile. Entering the main door and arriving in the corridor, he continued to explain. The core part of Military Intelligence Department 9's office building is underground. The upper floors are mainly for clerical staff, responsible for collecting and forwarding documents and other tasks. Of course, most Beyonders affiliated with Military Intelligence Department 9 don't stay underground after work, as the environment there isn't good, the atmosphere is oppressive, and accidents can happen at any time due to improper supervision of sealed artifacts. I'll take you to meet Deputy Director General Jonas, who is in charge of the Abnormal Affairs Tribunal. Then you'll be officially employed. Glenville added with a smile, this Deputy Director General Jonas has been very hard to see recently. He's often on missions, and each one lasts for 1 or 2 months. Aaron's lips curled into a mocking arc. He was busy transporting people for George III and building his mausoleum all day. How could he have time to manage Military Intelligence Department 9's affairs? However, human trafficking involving a demigod personally was extremely covert. It was likely that the population loss was too severe to continue concealing. Of course, the king's faction's interference and concealment also played a part, to the extent that the Church of Storms only noticed and began investigating the missing population in the South Continent 2 years later. Glenville led Aaron to a room on the second basement level. The sign on the door read, Major General Chunas, Deputy Director. Glenville stepped forward and knocked on the door. When a deep voice from behind the door said, "Come in," Glenville actively opened the door for Aaron. Aaron nodded slightly and walked in. Glenn did not follow, but gently closed the door and waited outside. The room was exceptionally luxurious. The floor was covered with a thick, pure wool carpet woven with ornate patterns. All the tables and chairs were crafted from exquisitely carved mahogany, emitting a faint fragrance. Major General Chunas Kolger, the Deputy Director of MI9, outwardly a Sequence 5 Mentor of Disorder of the Lawyer Pathway, but actually a Sequence 4 Role of the Fallen, sat behind a mahogany desk, scrutinizing Aaron with his deep blue, almost black eyes. He had thick but neat black eyebrows, short, stiff, dark hair, a high nose bridge like a mountain peak, and a large patch of beard extending around his mouth. His features were sharp, his face long, his lines cold, giving him a tough guy aura. His shoulders were exceptionally broad, making his clothes stretch tightly. He held a chieftain cigar, from the Mykont region of East Biro, widely recognized as the best cigar in the world. Chunas took a deep puff of his cigar, his deep blue, almost black eyes narrowing slightly, and Aaron felt a sense of pressure wash over him. Looking at the accomplice of the Backland Great Smog incident, who was now puffing smoke in front of him, Aaron couldn't help but sneer inwardly. Only revealing the strength of a Sequence 5, trying to give me a warning. A fool's dream. Seeing Aaron's calm expression, a hint of surprise flashed in Chunas's eyes. He no longer used his intimidating presence to give the young man a warning. After all, outwardly, he was only a Sequence 5 Mentor of Disorder, and his ability to contend with a demigod relied entirely on a powerful sealed artifact. He slowly began, "Welcome, Major Aaron, to MI9. You have been assigned to the 4th Special Investigation Group of the Abnormal Affairs Tribunal, as Deputy Group Leader. I hope that in your future work, you will uphold the principle of loyalty to LotM and loyalty to His Majesty the King, and achieve great accomplishments." Chunas emphasized the words, "loyalty to His Majesty the King." Seeing Aaron still maintain a deadpan expression, he waved his hand, dismissing him. Waiting outside the door, Glenn saw Aaron walk out expressionless. Within, "I knew it. Look," he said nothing more and led Aaron to the office of the 4th Special Investigation Group. Aaron pushed open the door. The interior was simply yet elegantly furnished, with light wood tables and chairs that exuded a rigorous yet friendly atmosphere. He stood at the doorway, scanning the room, and found that the large office contained only 3 people. Group Leader Major Glenn coughed lightly, walked in, and pointed to a rugged man closest to the door, introducing him to Aaron. "This is Captain Klaus Reinhers, our group's executive commissioner, a Sequence 8 folk of rage, who previously served in the Navy." Then, he pointed to the blond young man beside him and said, this is Captain Init Jin, a Sequence 8 barbarian. Finally, he pointed to a silent but extremely diligent brown-haired woman sitting furthest inside and introduced her. This is Lieutenant Maya Zenoni, who has recently been seconded to our group. She is a Sequence 9 mystery prior, responsible for the analysis and decryption of Meander clues. Aaron stood at the doorway, understanding the abilities and divisions of labor of the members. He also noticed the surprise in his team members' eyes, realizing they had recognized him. After all, whether it was killing the serial killer, or establishing the East Taker Bicycle Company, plus his own identity, he was definitely a well-known figure in Backland, especially in a place like MI9. Everyone, I am Aaron, the new deputy group leader. His voice was steady, his words concise yet full of confidence. In the days to come, let us face the challenges ahead together and begin our work. Backland, East Borough, the dilapidated Thorso Street. Mia Khalifa, with bloodshot eyes, sat blankly on the bed. Her child had died of some disease, her husband had left her, and she had been fired from the factory due to her mental distraction. She didn't know why she was there. Her only remaining memories were some fragmented scenes from before and some vague, terrifying images. In a daze, she heard seductive whispers, seemingly able to lead her away from pain. In a moment of blurred consciousness, Mia seemed to see a cross filling the sky, on which a naked man was nailed with black iron nails and ancient wooden stakes. His arms were spread, his feet above his head, which hung down like a pendant, and his body was covered with streaks of blood. Behind the cross was a world-encompassing shadow, and an unspeakable pair of eyes slowly opened. In just a moment, everything shattered. The room seemed like a mere illusory facade, crumbling inch by inch. In her last moment of consciousness, Mia desperately reached out her hand to the inverted figure on the cross. In a dim basement on Thorso Street, Mia, lying on the bed, suddenly flushed crimson, her eyes wide open. Before the several black-robed figures nearby could step forward to check, crimson fleshy tendrils sprouted from Mia's eyes, mouth, ears, and every pore on her body. Mia's body was covered in cracks, yet not a single drop of blood flowed out. Her body rapidly shriveled, and the crimson fleshy tendrils swayed without wind, eventually intertwining and coiling into a blood cocoon. The black-robed figures around them instantly became silent, their faces trembling with fear, all showing expressions of repentance. Drip, drip, drip. Accompanied by footsteps, a person wearing a hooded black robe, with a beautiful and eerie, unmasculine face, walked into the basement. One of the black-robed figures timidly stepped forward, trembling as he spoke. Esteemed Mr. A, the Lord's attempt to descend has still failed. The fragile body of a mortal simply cannot bear the great Lord, not even a trace of its power. I suggest we can choose beyonders of different sequences for the next attempt. Mr. A prostrated himself on the ground with a devout expression, muttering in a low voice. Several thick, bloody tendrils immediately extended from beneath his black robe, slowly and carefully removing the blood cocoon from Mia's corpse. The tendrils retracted, dragging the blood cocoon into Mr. A's black robe. Accompanied by a scream, the left arm of the black-robed figure who had just spoken was severed at the root. Mr. A, who had already stood up, stared at everyone with an evil gaze, a look of intoxicated pleasure on his face. He opened his mouth and slowly swallowed the still bleeding arm in his hand. He smacked his lips, extended a crimson tongue, and licked his lips, seemingly savoring the taste. He looked at the crowd and spoke in a cold tone. I agree with his suggestion for the next attempt, and you should also be glad that this woman ultimately chose to embrace the Lord. The Lord's power was not lost because of this. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been just one arm. Mr. A snorted, and many of the black-robed figures trembled, involuntarily recalling their companions who had merged into one with Mr. A after previous failed experiments. A suppressed and suffocating atmosphere spread, with only the sound of pounding heartbeats and heavy breathing. Tick-tock, tick-tock. A rapid series of footsteps came from outside the basement, breaking the oppressive atmosphere. A trace of surprise flickered across Mr. A's beautiful and demonic face. He turned his head, his indifferent eyes fixed on the doorway. A black-robed figure, looking disheveled, stumbled into the doorway, his face pale, his body even showing a certain degree of mutation. Mr. A's eyes narrowed. He recognized him. This was exactly the lookout he had arranged for the Aurora Order's Backland Underground gathering, a Sequence 9 secret supplicant. Before the secret supplicant could speak, Mr. A's figure flickered, and he appeared beside him, gripping his neck. He asked in a cold voice, "You shouldn't be here. What happened? Where is Quinlan Eunice?" Quinlan Eunice, a Sequence 7 shadow ascetic, was the second in command of the Aurora Order's Backland Diocese. Due to the special nature of the secret supplicant pathway mastered by the Aurora Order, the probability of Sequence 8 and Sequence 9 Beyonders losing control and dying was extremely high. Especially Sequence 8 listeners, they could directly hear the whispers of the corresponding hidden existences. If they could not advance in a short period, losing control and dying was their ultimate fate. Therefore, for the Aurora Order, Sequence 8 and Sequence 9 Beyonders of the secret supplicant pathway were, in a sense, merely consumables. Only by becoming Sequence 7 did they have a chance to become mid-level members of the Aurora Order. Some of the lower-ranking Divine Envoys among the Aurora Order's 22 Divine Envoys were also only at Sequence 7. Quinlan Eunice was a trusted subordinate personally selected by Mr. A and cultivated from Sequence 9 to Sequence 7. As Mr. A's trusted subordinate and assistant, Quinlan Eunice was responsible for overseeing the gathering location when the underground gathering was not being held. The black-robed figure, held up by his neck, said with a trembling voice. In the afternoon, a bunch of scoundrels from Military Intelligence 9 broke in. Mr. Quinlan led us in resistance, but we were instantly defeated. Mr. Quinlan couldn't escape. He was injured by them and captured as a hostage. The leader of those scoundrels claimed to be Major General Vice Director Chunis Korg of Military Intelligence 9. He let me go and told me to deliver a message to you, saying that he wanted to discuss something that would be mutually beneficial to both our sides. I didn't dare to hesitate, fearing they would follow me, so I used the shadow charm Mr. Quinlan gave me earlier and directly performed Shadow Leap to get here. Listening to his subordinate's explanation and seeing his body corroded and mutated from the Shadow Leap, the fierce light in Mr. A's eyes receded, and he repeated in a cold tone, "Military Intelligence 9, Chunis Korg." He then released his hand and said with fanaticism, "The Lord will bless us." As soon as he finished speaking, Mr. A's body twisted and collapsed into a mass of shadow, disappearing from the spot. Dash 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 dash. In Backland, in a detached villa only a dozen minutes carriage ride from Empress Borough. Chunis Korg sat leisurely on the sofa in the living room, one foot resting on the coffee table, holding a chief cigar in his right hand. The entire living room was in disarray, with traces of a fight everywhere. On the chair opposite the sofa, Quinlan Eunice was tied with his hands behind his back, already unconscious. Suddenly, Chunis Korg, who was smoking a cigar, raised an eyebrow, feeling his spirituality being touched. He turned his head to look at a corner of the living room. In the corner, shadows expanded, transforming into Mr. A, clad in a black hooded robe, with a face so beautiful and demonic it seemed unlike that of a male. Their gazes met, and the atmosphere instantly grew tense. Mr. A looked at Quinlan Eunice, who was tied with his hands behind his back and unconscious, then looked at an item in Chunis Korg's left hand not far away. His dangerous eyes narrowed, but he did not make a move. It was a tin pocket watch. On its dial, half of the symbolic patterns were neatly arranged in chronological order, while the other half was chaotic and mixed, even encroaching into the opposite area. This was precisely the powerful sealed artifact, Concerto of Light and Shadow, wielded by Chunis Korg, and it was also his confidence in being able to contend with a demigod by only displaying Sequence 5 strength. Chunis Korg put down his leg that was resting on the coffee table, pointed at Quinlan Eunice opposite him, and chuckled. "Please forgive me for using such a crude method to invite you to meet. I only knocked him out to prevent him from using Shadow Leap to escape. He himself isn't too badly injured. You can take him with you once we reach a cooperation agreement." Mr. A did not answer. He walked to Quinlan Eunice's side, and a segment of bloody tentacle extended from beneath his black robe, instantly corroding and breaking the ropes. The tentacle probed into Quinlan Eunice's body, and soon he slowly regained consciousness. Instantly aware of the situation, he immediately stood expressionlessly behind Mr. A, coldly watching the person who had knocked him out. Chunas Korg sat confidently on the sofa, his posture unchanged, and did not stop Mr. A's actions. Only when Mr. A spoke did he slightly straighten his body. "Cooperation. What kind of cooperation can you Augustus family dogs have with my Aurora order?" Chunas Korg was not angered and said calmly. "Mr. A, you exaggerate. I am only eternally loyal to His Majesty the King. As for cooperation, I think you will definitely be interested." He paused, looking at the mocking expressions on the faces of the two opposite him, and chuckled. "For example, we can turn a blind eye to your attempts, and we can even build an altar for you, but that's all." This already shows great sincerity. Mr. A's pupils contracted slightly. He scrutinized the Vice Director of Military Intelligence 9 from top to bottom and said with certainty, "Who else have you drawn in?" Chunas Korg did not conceal it and spoke directly. "Madame Despair Nightingale, the Sequence 4 Demoness of Despair of the Demoness sect." Mr. A pondered for a moment, then suddenly spoke, "Aren't you afraid that our Lord will truly descend?" Chunas Korg caressed the pocket watch in his hand and took a deep puff of his cigar. "We only promise to build an altar for you. As for whether it succeeds, that is your business. Anyway, for you, as long as there is such an opportunity, you would even be willing to sacrifice your life for it. We only hope the situation becomes more chaotic. As for the rest, that is the business of the major churches." Seeing Mr. A nod, a smile appeared on Chunas's face. He slowly rose and walked towards the door, saying as he went, "We will discuss the specific cooperation agreement with all participating parties before informing you. I wish us pleasant cooperation." Watching Chunas Korg walk out the door, Mr. A murmured, "I am willing to dedicate everything to my lord." He then turned to look at Quinlan Eunice behind him and said indifferently, "I will be fully responsible for this matter. You go to the underground laboratory and take charge of the subsequent work there." Quinlan Eunice respectfully assented, his body collapsing into a mass of shadow and disappearing. Mr. A remained silently in his original spot, lost in thought. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.